live button. So let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plains of the internet. I know I'm late, but that's because yesterday I was trying to try a different software functionality, and we had all of the audio problems yesterday. And so I reverted back. We're now back on the original software, and it looks like it is functional, which is very good news. That means we can go ahead and get started, my friends. And so let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today we're talking about Steve Bannon trial day 2. And it was a very interesting morning because there was a lot of activity. You know, yesterday we left off the show talking with Joe, talking with Viva, and there was some problems taking place there about this October 8th letter. And we talked a little bit about that this morning on the Walk and Talk. And so I made that one publicly available for everybody. We do that every morning for members. But since we've been covering Bannon, I sort of detailed some of that earlier this morning. And so I'm not going to spend a ton of time unpacking that. But there's some argument about this October 8th letter, and Bannon's going to now try to sort of insert a new defense. And all of that was taking place this morning. And so it was very, very busy, a lot of activity. But we do have a full panel of jurors set. We do have opening arguments to go through. And we even have our first witness today. Her name is Kristin Amerling. And so we're going to go through all of that. Now, I don't know if we're going to be hearing from Joe. I don't think we're going to be hearing from Viva today. But Joe may or may not swing by. We'll have to see if we can hear from him. But regardless, we've got so much to attend to. Let me explain a little bit more about that. So if you want to follow along at home, the place to do that is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's where you can participate in the show. But if you want to follow along at home, you can go to j6mindmap.com and you'll see something that looks like this. Now, we are, of course, going to talk about why the select committee is illegally constituted, in my opinion. But we're going to spend all day talking about this fellow right here, Steve Bannon. He's been charged with 2 counts contempt of Congress. Yesterday, we unpacked a lot of that. We really spent time recapping the entire timeline and assembling everything that has taken place here. But we have more activity today. Of course, we are now in trial. And yesterday, we had jury selection. And so, unfortunately, these transcripts are coming in a lot later than I wanted. And that's, not anybody's fault. It's just these are timing things. And so I also don't have transcripts today, which is a bit of a bummer. I got both transcripts late last night, right around, I think one came in about 8 o'clock my time. So it would have been like 11 o'clock East Coast. And then the other transcript came in, I think like 11 o'clock my time, which would have been like 2 a.m. East Coast. It was really late. And so I'm thinking, man, these court clerks are just, clerking away over there. And so they're reporting like mad, but we've got these transcripts that came out from jury selection. And so, I don't know if we want to spend a lot of time on them, honestly. We can do that, but a lot of it is sort of irrelevant because we have a full panel now. And a lot of this was really the, kind of the underlying heavy lifting before you just want the main meal. You don't want all the little appetite. Like, give me the steak already. Okay. I'm done with the salads and the croutons. Give me the steak. Like, what do we got here? I don't need the 5 hors d'oeuvres. But we're going to go through jury selection. Now, the interesting thing, right, the actual meat and potatoes, the steak, as it were, is the jury panel. And we're going to go through a few people who got the boot that are not going to be on the panel. They got stricken by the peremptory strikes and the strikes for cause. And then we're going to go through the actual makeup of the jury. So you can see here, I started this. I went through. We have an MVP reporter here today. A woman goes by the name of Toria Brooke, this woman here. She's on Twitter and she's on Truth. And she was doing the best reporting that I have seen out there today. And I followed about, 15 people doing like the heavy lifting here. Amazing work. She gave us a great breakdown of all the jurors, all by numbers. And so we are going to go through some of her posts. And I give you, really, really strongly encourage you to follow her. She's on Truth and on Twitter at the real Toria Brooke. So just go take a look at her. But she gave us a breakdown of the jurors. Okay, so we've got 14 people on there. You see all the way 1104, 1371, 14, 1061, and so on, all the way down. And we'll spend a little bit of time taking a look at what the makeup really is, right? What the resemble is, what the makeup of the jury panel is. Okay. So we'll spend some time on that, and then we'll get back into Steve Bannon's reaction from yesterday. Bannon was outside of court, and he was actually communicating with the press, and so we'll take a look at that. We have the MVP, the real Toria Brooke. We already talked about her, but she's going to walk us through some of the testimony today. We have the opening arguments and the first witness. The first witness in the House is going to be Kristin Amerling. This is the chief counsel for the House of Representatives, right? So this is sort of that custodian of records person who's going to be the first witness and going to detail really what the subpoena entailed, what the subpoena looked like, why it was valid, and how it all worked. And so you can see actually the subpoena was admitted into evidence today. We've also got a copy of this. This is the actual document that Steve Bannon got, and we'll go take a look at that, right? This is the big sort of fishing expedition document, and he just didn't, comply. Obviously, that's why we're here. So we'll take a look at that. And then Bannon is also reacting today, and this was a little bit more of a spicier reaction today. He actually sort of said that the committee was illegitimate, and he got a little bit more Steve Bannon, right? When we were listening to Bannon yesterday, he was sort of reserved a bit, right? He was a little more conciliatory towards the jurors. No, they're going to be fair, and this is all going to be above board. I'm not concerned about this too much. Today, a little bit of a spicier reaction, and so we will, of course, take a look at that. And so we've got a lot to get to, and if the transcripts come in as we're going through the program today, then we will hit those as well. But my friends, if you want to be a part of the show, then the place to do that is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We've got an awesome community over there, and we do the morning walk and talks. If you saw the morning walk and talk today, we do those basically every morning. Some mornings we take off, but every single morning, really except Sundays, is a walk and talk bonanza. It's a lot of fun. So join us over there. We've got Bonnie Specs over there, Vienticus Prime, Lisa Lemon chatting away, along with Albion Thailand, John McGarvey, and others are all chatting away over there. Kelly Salnow. And Viva just ended his stream a while ago. Oh, so Viva's going to come on. Oh, I didn't know Viva. Does Viva want to come on here? I don't know if he does or not. But anyways, so we'll have to check that out. Here is, let me link up to, let me send the Zoom link to everybody in case they do want to hop on. And we'll see if I can figure this out. Here is my link if anybody wants to hop on. Okay, so I'm sending that over to Viva and those guys. And if they want to hop on, they can. But if you want to be a part of the show, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Of course, YouTube membership, click that join button right next to that subscribe button. I appreciate it and love you forever. And if you happen to know anybody in the state of Arizona that has a criminal charge, whether it's a domestic violence or a DUI or a misdemeanor felony, we can help with that. And we have an amazing law firm at the R&R Law Group, 480-787-0394. We offer free case evaluations, and we would love the opportunity to help. We have a lot of fun on the show talking about criminal law and a lot of the nuts and bolts of how this works. But we got a team every day in the courts literally fighting for good people charged with crimes, and we're passionate about the work that we do. So now, with all of that being said, then let's go ahead and start back at the top. So in this case, on this trial, yesterday we left off. There were all sorts of continuances. Remember that the Bannon defense is saying this thing is ridiculous. We have the January 6th Select Committee. They've actually got a hearing scheduled tomorrow. Okay, today is Wednesday. I'm sorry, today is Tuesday. So on Thursday, not tomorrow, 2 days from now, the January 6th Select Committee is going to have another hearing. And Steve Bannon has been the subject of many of these hearings. He's actually been put in video clips, right? This is all sort of like this book report that they keep presenting to America. And they are doing it over and over and over again. Bannon has said, how can this be a fair and impartial trial if I'm literally the subject of a national inquisition? Doesn't seem like it makes all that much sense. But the courts have said, we can solve this with jury selection. The judge, literally, Judge Nichols, said, I'm not going to give you a continuance. We're not going to postpone this thing out. All we need is just the right jurors. And so we're actually going to go through this. Now, the jurors, my understanding of this, right, the judge really did a pretty solid job on this. And actually Joe Good Lawgic here, I think I linked his channel down in the description, or it's at Good Lawgic if you want to go follow him. He was saying yesterday in his opinion, what he was observing was that Judge Nichols was very, very thorough with this. And I've seen a lot of that sort of even buttressed by Miss Brooke and others. And so we'll take a look. But there were some people who just got booted right out. And so there were individuals on Twitter. Ryan J. Riley, I think he's over at CBS, if I remember right. He says, okay, today, we're now at the peremptory strike stage of the Steve Bannon selection process. The government has moved to strike juror number 475, who worked at a small legal nonprofit. So he's gone. Small legal nonprofit. Why might you want that jury or juror gone? Wonder what kind of nonprofit it was. Was it a Republican nonprofit? I don't know. Bannon moves to strike juror 1391, who watched PBS and Fox News and was a retired research director. And so now that one kind of makes your eyebrows go up a little bit. Why would they strike a Fox News viewer? I don't know. That seems like that might be somebody who's favorable to Bannon. No? I don't know. So we're seeing that people are bouncing off the jury panel. And we had some more reporting over here from Ryan J. Riley. He says the DOJ, so the Department of Justice, they moved to strike 1913. She's a woman who has plans to take care of her grandmother. Good excuse. I can't be here, right? I got to take care of grandma. Bannon moves to strike 257. No more details about that person. We also have 749. Another juror worked for the DC Healthcare Ombudsman. Bannon strikes 1117, part-time employer for a film festival. Right. A film festival part-time employee. Oh, yeah. You can see the picture of that individual, right? You kind of know what that looks like. We have John Howhey also reported on Twitter. A couple other people got booted. 1913, right? That one we already heard about. She was the woman who was going to be caring for her grandmother, but she's also a former paralegal. So she got booted. The prosecutors objected if they could ask about when Bannon had to appear on the subpoena date. So that's interesting. Okay. Another person removed. Bannon's team kicked 257. He was a wallpaper salesman who said he never heard of Bannon, never heard of the January 6th attack, or pretty much about anything. They also sent home 1117, who was an assistant to an arts festival director. Okay, so that's that same person. But again, this is a little bit weird, right? Isn't that kind of the exact juror that you want if you're Bannon? Somebody who doesn't even know who you are and has never heard about this case and sells wallpaper. Seems like a pretty reasonable person. So why'd Bannon want to strike that person? Well, we don't know. So those are the people who were gone. Now, as I mentioned at the start of the show, there's a great thread over from this individual here. So please make sure you go and follow this individual, the real Toria Brooke on Twitter. Oh my gosh, I'm not even following her. Gosh, I just discovered her today, and really, really great work. So final jury profiles on all of that. We'll get there in a minute. But first, let's take a look at what the actual docket shows us. Okay, so yesterday we got an update from the federal court docket. This is the Pacer. This is called Pacer. This is like the actual back end of the federal reporting system. And so yesterday we had the minute entry for the 18th. Here today we've got the 19th, right? Here's the minute entry. And so let's read through this. So the day's over. Court has concluded. It says proceedings have been held on 7/19 as to the 2 counts. 12 jurors and 2 alternates sworn, right? So we got the full panel that we're going to go through right now. The motion to dismiss the case as to Bannon is denied for several reasons, as stated on the record. And so you can see this was the motion that they filed on the 15th. So not too long ago, just about 4 days ago, filed this motion. And this came out of the defense. And so they're saying, Judge, this is a motion to exclude congressional evidence or to dismiss the indictment based on a granting of the motion to quash. So the argument here, Bannon faces trial on several charges. 9 members of Congress set in motion. Committee members filed a motion to quash the subpoenas. And remember, Bannon sent subpoenas out to Reps Hoyer, Clyburn, Pelosi. I mean, he was sort of like really giddy about that. We're going to subpoena everybody. And so he did that. And now the argument is that he's saying the court, by granting the motion to quash. Okay, so remember, Bannon came out and he filed subpoenas for all of the January 6th committee. Everybody on there, all 9 of those yahoos. He said, you want to prosecute me here? Kinzinger, how about you come and testify at my trial? Now, Kinzinger and Raskin and all of these people, they're going to automatically revert back to the speech and debate clause, right? They have immunity from participating in these things. So they filed a motion to quash those subpoenas. Bannon said, you got to get your butt in here. And they said, no, we don't, because speech and debate, right? We're protected, we're immune. And the court agreed with them. But the problem with that is that now Bannon has no witnesses, right? He's got no evidence to present because all of the potential witnesses against him are Congresspeople and they're all immune. So after the court issued that ruling and said that the motion to quash is granted, in other words, Bannon subpoenas for the House professionals doesn't, it's not valid anymore. Bannon is now filing this new motion. Okay, he's saying, Judge, look, you created a fundamental conflict here between Bannon's Fifth and Sixth Amendment rights to compulsory process, to confrontation, and to present a defense at trial. Bannon respectfully argues that because the movements here, the House, have retreated behind their, he says here, the speech and debate clause, Bannon has no choice. This is directly implicating his privileges, right? What evidence is he going to present? What type of testimony is even going to be useful? He has no witnesses. So now he's saying, I can't present my defense because I can't subpoena my witnesses because they are immune from subpoena because they're Congresspeople, right? And they know that, they know that. That's why this whole thing is going on. There's no repercussions for them. They can conduct their fake scam committee hearings all they want. And what's anybody going to do about it? They just say, well, we're constitutionally protected. I have a constitutional right to get up there and say stupid things all day long. And they're right? They really are kind of right about this. So Bannon submitted this motion. You can see it's very substantive and it is 24 pages long. Now, when you take a look at the court docket, the docket is just going to tell you that it was dismissed or was denied, right? The case was not dismissed. The case is still pending, obviously, but it's denied for reasons set forth on the record. So we're not going to get a written a written order. We only get an oral order from the judge. In other words, he just said it out there in public. He just sort of communicated it there in court, and we don't get to unpack all of the rationale for that. And this has happened a lot, denied for reasons set forth on the record. He also denied another motion to dismiss when the issue came up about the composition of the select committee, whether it was legitimate or not. I've said it's totally illegitimate. The judge said, for reasons set forth on the record, that this whole thing can proceed forward. But I'd love to know what the reasons are, right? You can of course get the transcripts and read it, but it's all very, very, let's say, not detailed, right? We're going to defer to the House rules because they're the House. That's about it, right? If you boil it all down, it's a bunch of fancy language, but there's no real meat to it. And what the hell am I talking about? Let's just get to this right now and just get it out of the way. Okay. The January 6th committee, in my opinion, is illegally constituted. And, I know there's a lot of people out there that really want to overly complicate this. And we discussed one of these cases with Viva yesterday. I think it was on a website that's like a fact checker website or something, right? They're referencing the case between, I think it's Pelosi and who is the other one? Nunez, or I forget what it was. Viva pulled it up yesterday. I looked it up, and it's a civil case. Okay. So it's not a criminal case, and it's the same concept, right? It's deferential to the House of Representatives. It's saying the House can conduct their own committees, create their own bodies, and they are just allowed to do whatever they want to do. That's very different than saying that it is legally constituted. So I've still not found a court of law in the United States that says the committee is legally constituted. The only thing they've been saying is that there's not enough of a speed bump here in the arguments that are being raised to derail a prosecution that is legitimately brought by the executive branch, right? They're not making the connection. They're not going beyond the executive branch through the prosecution. They're saying the DOJ accepted this from this fake committee. And so because it's coming up through the regular chain of command, we're going to honor it like a regular legitimate crime. But that is different than anything that's going on in the other cases. They're saying that it's not enough to derail the prosecutions, but not that it's legitimately constituted. And why? Why is that? Well, because, my friends, 2 + 2 does not equal 5. It doesn't, but they try to make that happen, which is why they have to hide behind this stupid, all of these shenanigans. This is HR 503. We've explained this many times, but it's very important. So I'm going to do it every single show. Section 2 composition says the speaker shall appoint 13 members to the select committee, 5 of whom shall be appointed after consultation with the minority leader. Okay. Shall. And it says 13. Shall appoint 13. It's as clear as can be. It's not discretionary. They don't have choices. It doesn't say that, we can appoint 11 if this, that, or whatever. Appoint 13 members. Okay. So by their own governing document, they're out of compliance. Why? Because they only have 9 members, 7 of whom happen to be Democrats, 2 of whom happen to be these fake Republicans, right? Which is not representative. We're talking about a committee in the House of Representatives, which is supposed to be representative, and it isn't. And the 2 Republicans are on there. We're not done with consultation with the minority leader, right? He wanted other people on this panel. They're not on there. So it is illegally constituted and illegitimate. Now, because they referred it over to a friendly DOJ, they're going to take the crime and run with it. They're not going to contest it because they are on the same team and they want to see their political enemies eviscerated. So we go back over now to the docket. That motion was denied. This other motion was denied, that Bannon, 1, can't subpoena any of those people, and 2, can't make the argument that it is illegal. All denied. Denied for reasons set forth on the record. Now, this morning in our walk and talk, we talked about the oral motion to continue that was floating around, and I was a little bit late for the morning walk and talk because of that. I was like, oh, great. I saw this motion on Twitter, and I'm like, I can't, what if they grant it? Well, then, the whole trial is going to be off. So, hey, Nate, the lawyer's in the house. Oh my goodness. He says it's simple. House rules. Yeah, he says it's non-justiciable. The court has no jurisdiction over House rules. Same with the Senate. I know, Nate, but that doesn't mean that it's a legitimately constituted committee. I'm going to invite Nate on. Nate's going to have to come on the show. We'll have to debate this, I suppose. But the oral argument here, Nate, if you want to come on the show, I'll invite you on here right now. But I sent the Zoom link over to Joe and Viva, but they are, I don't know what's going on. I'm not really good at all of this group activity stuff. I don't have a lot of experience with it, but Nate's point is not wrong, right? He's actually making the argument that the House is sort of irrelevant from the process, right? It's excluded from the process, which is true, but that's a different point than it's legally and lawfully constituted. So, it's a fun debate. I think that it's all done instinctual. It's all done to concoct an environment that makes it difficult for you to do anything about it, right? The committee is not playing in the regular wheelhouse, not playing in the regular line of criminal prosecution. It's only something that is operational in serving their interests. So, all right. So, yeah, Nate says you're right about the committee. Yeah, all right. So I get so hot over these things. Oh, yeah. So I've been screaming about this, Nate. I love to connect with you, my man. I know we've been sort of circling each other for years now. I don't think we've ever done a stream together. But okay, but I'd love to chat with Nate about it, because obviously there's multiple ways to skin this cat, of course, which is not a good analogy. I happen to like cats. Denied for reasons set forth on the record. Jury trial continued to 7:20 at 9 a.m., which of course is tomorrow. So we've got an in-person before Judge Carl Nichols. We've got all the court reporters are there. And then we have on 7:19 a minute order saying that they've impaneled the jury. And look at this. The jury is going to get lunches paid for. Deliberations, all meals for said jury shall be paid for. And we're going to be back tomorrow at 9 a.m., right? So court is going to start back at 9 a.m. And let me sort of get caught up on the chat here. Dr. John Nichols says, you guys have been circling each other like sharks. Robin, Nate. Nate, did we connect it during Rittenhouse at all? I don't even think we connected during Rittenhouse. Like, we might have been on one of those big group streams, but not like, I don't know that we talked. All right. So here, let's go back over to the committee now. Okay. So now we know, to the panel now of the jurors. The jury is here. And I wanted to share with you this individual. Her name is the real Toria Brooke. And she did a great job on this. Okay. So basically what I did in our mind map is we just extracted all of her tweets and just sort of assembled them in this thread here. So we can just go right through this. All right. Let me send Nate a link here. Hang on one second, everybody. Let me send Nate a link, and then maybe we can get his thoughts on some of this jury selection. All right, Nate, I am on Zoom right now, so it's going to be a little bit weird, maybe. I don't know. So I'm sending that to Nate. I don't know if he wants to hop on or not, but Nate, it's on Zoom, so it's going to be on a Zoom. It's not the same restream. It's not the same as Streamlabs. I don't know how it's going to work. We might get that mirror thing, but I tried to do the restream yesterday and it just didn't work. So we're communicating now through a live stream, which is just how these things go. Okay, so Nate has an invite. If he wants to hop on, cool. If Viva or Joe wants to hop on, cool. If not, we'll just keep barreling along. But what you can see, my friends, is that we have all 14 numbers here, all the jurors, and we didn't even have this type of detail for the Sussman trial. Michael Sussman, we had a difficult time sort of playing the musical chairs game because we could see, or we could hear from the transcripts that the judge was specifically sort of moving people around without saying their numbers, right? So like somebody would be sitting in a chair and he would say, you move over here and you move over there. And we didn't see what the numbers were, right? So we couldn't really assemble all of this. Well, the real Toria Brooke, she did all of that for us. And so as you can see, she sort of gave us this, this summation of every one of the jurors. Like, look how amazing this is. So she says, meet the jury pool. And she posted this over on True Social. So I think that's probably the best place to follow her. And says specifically, United States of America, 1104 is a 1104, a secondhand English speaker. This older man served on a grand jury 8 years ago for 3 months in DC. Okay, so secondhand English speaker, older gentleman, grand jury 8 years ago, served for 3 months in DC. So you got that, right? You've got that person, right? ESL. All right. Don't know much about him. 1371 is a black female. Nope, that's not that one. I think I didn't attach that one. What did I do? Let's go just over to the regular, to her regular thread. So she gave us all the details here. Look how long this thread is. It's beautiful. I'd encourage you to go follow her. Dang it. All right. So I don't know. We'll go to number 14. 14, this is a fit middle-aged, a physically fit middle-aged black male, laughing and lighthearted. He says he watched about 1/4 of the first day of the J6 committee and the hearings. His perception regarding the hearings is that they're trying to find the truth about what went on January 6th. Other benign points to note, his aunt was a lawyer in DC and he's involved with an appliance company out in Maryland, right? So this is juror number 14. So we have next up 1061, younger black man. He works at a COVID testing center. So 1061 is a young black man who knows nothing about the case and has not watched the January 6 hearings. He works as a contractor for COVID testing under DC healthcare. So we see that. And now we have, let's see, number 122 is going to be another middle-aged black man who works as a hospital technician. So we've got two medical professionals, general knowledge about January 6, but doesn't know much about Bannon. And so 122, black male, and we also have medical professional along with a COVID testing contractor. We have 1041. Let's see who this person is. Oh, 1041 is a recovering attorney, not practiced law in 10 years. So she says she could be impartial. She currently works at the State Department where she runs a team for religious freedom. Based on the government's questioning, she said that if she could omit matters of executive privilege, she said that if she had to, she could omit matters of executive privilege in regard to Bannon's case. What? Okay, so hang on a minute. So I think there were two. Yeah, so a recovering attorney, we'll say 1041, recovering attorney, and I think she was sort of a middle-aged female, is what we said. Herself, got to be careful with a lot of the language on this, right? Recovering attorney, middle-aged, State Department, we'll say, State Department on this one. 1425, as we continue to work down the panel, let's see who else we've got. 1425, black male in his 20s, has not heard of the case regarding Bannon at all. So that's interesting. So he's a young guy. So early 20s, in his 20s, no idea who Bannon is. So black male, 20s, no knowledge of Bannon. We'll throw in there. And then 544, that's going to be another, looks like man in his 20s or 30s. He works as a maintenance manager for Parks and Recreation. Backwards hat, beard, tattoos, has not heard much about January 6th or the case. What? But from what he has heard, he doesn't think what happened makes sense. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one right there. Huh, that's an interesting. Maybe that's your, I wonder why he didn't get struck. Interesting. Tattooed park worker, not heard of January 6th. Not heard much about January 6th. But from what he has heard, doesn't think what happens makes sense. Yeah, that's true. It doesn't make any sense. We have a lot of questions about it. Very astute juror here, isn't he? Backwards hat, beards, tattoos. I mean, I don't know. Giant maybe muscles, and I don't know what he looks like. I don't know. Doesn't think what happened makes sense. I don't It doesn't make sense. All right, next up. So here, let's flesh this one out. So I don't know what race he is. I don't know if he's a white guy or what, but we'll say male, 20s, 30s, tattoos, and quote, doesn't make sense, right? So he might be sort of a favorable juror here on the J6 saga. Now, we also have, let's go to 1798. 1798 here is a middle-aged Jamaican man who drives special needs students for a living. What a nice man. It says he reads the Washington Post and he recalls things about the case. So probably not good things about the case, right? He read one article about Bannon and watched a few of the January 6th committee hearings. He remembers that Bannon was mentioned in the hearings and that he didn't comply with the subpoenas from Congress. This man says he could be fair and hear evidence in the case and would show Bannon did not ignore the subpoenas. All right. So, this other prior lawyer was talking about some of that stuff like executive privilege and whatnot. Yeah. So 1798 we have is middle-aged Jamaican man. Watched a few of the hearings. So middle-aged Jamaica man watched some hearings. Then we have 1053. Let's see what we've got here. Got two reports from her. Millennial white woman. Millennial white woman who says she has previously submitted reports to the Senate for an internship. So a millennial white intern at the Senate. Let's get that down. Millennial intern. Senate. And more about her. She tells us that she previously worked 2 years in civil rights and a criminal immigration law. Criminal law. So that's curious. We also have a paralegal in 2019. She is highly versed in constitutional law in the Middle East. She currently works at the International Republican Institute, a nonprofit where most of the board were drawn from the Republican Party. So that's interesting. Republican Institute. International Republican Institute. What is that? Let's see what that is. If we open that up, it is in.org. And this is what that looks like. Advancing democracy worldwide. Let's see what this is all about. Every person wants the ability to control her destiny. No one desires a society where their political rights are restricted. Governments abuse their power. What we do. Citizen-centered governance, civil society, independent media, election integrity, political inclusion. IN's approach is rooted in the belief that full and equal participation is appropriate in elections. Okay, so you see what it is. And that is 1053. So, that's interesting. Like Republican intern? And that's kind of surprising. Seems like that one's a little bit more middle of the roady, right? 1957. Let's see what we've got here. This one, a woman in her 30s or 40s works for NASA as a photography contractor. Says one of her other potential jurors used to be her roommate. Wow. All right. So she's watched some of the hearings. Says that all her family members are strong Democrats. Claims many of her photographer friends were at the Capitol on January 6th. Interesting. So she's pretty close to this case. So she is 30s or 40s NASA contractor. NASA, let's say photographer, friends at 1-6. So her photographer friends, right, were there. And all family members are strong Democrats. So I'm going to guess that she's probably a strong Democrat too, given how she was raised and such. And let's see here. Claims many of her photographer friends were at the Capitol. So I guess they were just taking pictures of the madness when they were over there. So that's number 1957. And then we have next up, let's see here. Professional fine artist who runs an online art gallery and works with the Van Gogh Museum. Both of his parents are lawyers, but neither in criminal law. He hasn't heard anything about the case. So again, sort of no race. Looks like a male art institute a museum, parents, lawyers, no criminal law. Never heard anything. Shoot. Okay. Never heard about the case. And then our last one, but not least, we have 764. 764 is here. Middle-aged white male with artist hair. Artist hair. I don't know what that means. Probably colored, maybe? Who works in architecture on residential buildings, knows about Bannon's case from watching Channel 4 NBC News, watched one of the J6 committee hearings, but doesn't remember them mentioning Bannon. So middle-aged, white male, artist hair, whatever that means. Okay, watched some J6 hearings, but doesn't remember much else about it. So that looks like the panel. Now, I think 540, did we forget 540? Yeah, we did. 540 is here. Female physician in internal medicine. So we actually have a lot of medical people here. And pediatrics who has briefly seen the J6 committee hearing clips while at work. She says that the sources from her J6 knowledge range from Fox News to CNN. She reads the Washington Post and the New York Times. Great. And according to her understanding, the allegations made against Bannon are that he was willfully non-compliant to the subpoenas served. Willfully non-compliant. He was willfully non-compliant against the subpoena served. So sounds like that person is sort of has her mind made up. Female physician. And so she's another one who is a sort of in the medical profession, right? We have these two guys, 1061 COVID testing, 122 medical professional, Republican intern, female physician, says Bannon refuse subpoena, right? Sort of acknowledge that. Also pediatrics. And that's the panel, right? So now you'd have to go through and sort of splice and dice this. We've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, looks like 6 maybe that we can guess people of color on the panel. I guess if you wanted to say that, maybe 6, 7, I don't know, right? Hard to tell because we don't have definitions on all that, but I know that's something that people talk about, and so they want to know what it looks like. And this is actually something that Good Lawgic brought up when he was here, I think yesterday, saying that, there might be a strategy about certain demographics and how they might vote on this case. So interesting. That's the full panel. Now, it is, of course, going to be debated about how this matters, whether it matters at all, if it's relevant or whatnot. But we didn't get this panel until today, right? They came out this morning. They had their peremptory strikes, and so they struck a bunch of people off. This is what it looks like. And if you want to sort of follow along at home, it's over at j6mindmap.com. You can certainly check that out. So let me just take a quick pause here and see what's going on and say hello and some shout outs to everybody who is here. Nate, the lawyer, was here earlier, says it's simple. House rules are non-justiciable. The court has no jurisdiction over House rules. Same with the Senate. And he says you're right about the committee. And we got those. So thank you, Nate, for being here. And I'll reach out to Nate and we'll schedule something to debrief all of this. But I'm glad he stopped by. Just Cause says, Rob, this is for AOC's false handcuff bail fund, LOL, which is hilarious. We're going to have to unpack that story too. AOC, you probably saw this, but she was literally walking out. A bunch of Congress people got arrested at an abortion protest rally outside the Supreme Court. and AOC was sort of faking like she was in handcuffs, and she wasn't in handcuffs. She actually put her hand up and was sort of like preaching, I'm getting arrested. It was a whole thing. But my goodness, it turned out to be a big mess, and so we'll have to unpack some of that. Do we have somebody in the house? I think I see Law and Lumber who is hopping on here. I see a Zoom link, and they're connecting to audio. That might be Joe. I think Joe might actually be over at Law and Lumber's house over, I think, right? He's sort of briefed in over there. Yeah, there's Joe. Hey, there is Joe. Joe, are you ready? Bring you on, my friend. Can you hear me?
Let's do it.
You're there, right? I think I can hear you. So let's make sure the audience can hear you, because I've got you on a Zoom. And so I'm trying to figure out, first of all, Joe, as I'm getting you up on the screen, give us an update, man. How are you? So you're settled in. I know
God, I'm doing great. I'm in Law and Lumber's house, which is why I'm wearing his moniker there over here.
Awesome. And so you're done with court. How was court today? I know there was a lot of activity this morning, and
yes, yeah, there was a lot of nothing that we expected, basically.
Yeah.
We thought we were going to start off with there being peremptories being used to whittle down our pool from 22 down to 12 jurors and 2 alternates. And the next thing we know, there's oral arguments going on. There are motions happening that Mr. Schoen there, which I did confirm, it is Schoen.
You got the name? Good. Thank you.
Yeah. So basically they came out and he was firing because he said, look, we can't, based on the rulings we had last week, we can't talk at all about executive privilege. Well, if I can't talk about executive privilege, now the government's going to come in here. They're going to be showing letters where Bannon is asserting executive privilege. And they want to show this. So they're basically going to be implying, if we don't talk about it, it's going to be implying that he's acting in bad faith. And that, there's the whole basis of him coming in here is just, it makes him look that much worse if we can't talk about it. And the judge basically was like, look, it's not that you can't talk about it. In certain circumstances, you can talk about executive privilege. So, for example, if because of his belief in executive privilege, he expected that there would be accommodations made. So that now makes that date less flexible, more flexible in his mind, that it's not an automatic, you must be here on October 14th date, but that there will be accommodations. That now would be a mistake of fact. So essentially, for your audience to understand, clearly here, the distinction is that you're allowed to argue a mistake of fact, and that's a viable defense. You cannot argue a mistake about the law. So you cannot say, I thought the speed limit was 60 and it turns out it was 40. And then, you were going 55 and say, well, I was wrong about the law. That's automatically a loser. So they don't let the jury even hear that. And that's why he was being so harsh on executive privilege, because he said, since there was no executive privilege, for him to start arguing and saying, well, I thought there was executive privilege, that would be confusing the jury into thinking that that's something that they should afford some weight to. And that's why Schoen said, I thought we couldn't bring this up at all. Now you're changing everything on me. And the judge says, I'm not changing anything. This is what I said to you on Thursday when I issued my ruling. And Schoen wasn't having it. And so much so that ultimately the judge pulled a transcript from Thursday and read the section where he made an intimation along this line without spelling it out as clearly. But the judge sort of was trying to vindicate his position here, saying, it's not like I said you could never bring it up. I said, if he were to proffer a defense that's predicated on that executive privilege would lead him towards getting a accommodation, and that there would be some more flexibility on the date, that could be a viable defense for him to raise. And in that context, he could raise executive privilege.
Yeah, and so this kind of comes from that October 8th letter, right, where I sort of explained this to the audience this morning, where the idea was he got a hard deadline of October 7th and October 14th, and he did not comply with those. And the committee, Benny Thompson, sort of sent a letter back over to him. And in that letter, it was sort of intimating that this wasn't that big of a breach, right? In other words, the committee would have accepted his homework late and it wouldn't have been a criminal problem. And so, now that letter, if they're going to introduce it to the jurors, right? Bannon's going to want to add some meat and potatoes to that and say, this is why I thought that and why I had some flexibility and some ambiguity in this process.
And then at the other hand, I thought the government made a fair counter argument saying, imagine someone never pays their taxes. And then the IRS says, look, we want to try and make a combination with you to resolve this without having to take it to the next level. Does that mean that we're going to just forget about the fact that they didn't pay? Does that mean that's a concession that they're saying you don't have to pay your taxes? Of course not. Yeah. They're just trying to resolve it. So she was saying it's the same thing here. We wanted to get him in here to testify because we needed his testimony in order to do whatever it is that we're doing. And so we're trying to work things out with him, but that doesn't now give him a pass and a basis to say that it wasn't a hard date. It's a hard date. The same way April 15th is a hard date for people to file their taxes.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, even just from an incentives perspective, right? You don't want to give people the ability to sort of wait till the last minute, change their playbook, and then suddenly comply, and then have all of the prior charges dismissed. That would just create some perverse incentives, and everybody would do that. Everybody would take advantage of that. There's sort of an example that we had when I was first practicing in law. I would do a lot of civil traffic hearings, right? These are speeding tickets. And one of the things that I would often like to do, and actually, maybe we still do this, but you set it for hearings. You set these civil traffic hearings for trials. Essentially in Arizona, we have full trials for traffic tickets. Cops come in, there's opening arguments and closing argument, the whole thing. It's kind of ridiculous. But one of the things that you do is you sort of, will set it for a hearing. And if the cop doesn't show up or something goes awry there, then you can be there and you can just win by default because there's nothing even there. Right. And so I think some people or the government here is going to be looking at Bannon saying that maybe he's trying to do that, right? He's trying to sort of buy all the time in the world, wait the clock out, see what happens. And then at the very last minute say, I'm okay. Yes, I'm willing to testify now. Now change, now dismiss the case and because I'm willing to comply. And, prosecutors, I've had judges scold us for doing that. You can't set these things and just wait for the world to happen, and they'll scold you on that. It sounds like that argument's not going to fly here with Bannon either, even though, it's something that has to be made.
But it seemed like today was there was so much hostility and anger everywhere. Like the judge got mad at the state because Vaughn, who is one of the counsel, she's one of the attorneys for the state. At one point this morning, she made a claim saying that, like, well, if Bannon wants to introduce evidence saying that his attorneys told him not to appear, we'd be totally fine with that because then when he doesn't appear, it shows that was willful. And that's one of the elements we have to establish. So if he made a decision, that would be the mistake of law that he has based on what his attorneys told him. That's not justifiable, even if you're told that by your attorneys. And now it's an admission by him that he intentionally did not come in on those dates because of a mistake of law, which is not a viable defense. So we'd be fine with him introducing that evidence. And before she even finished the sentence, the judge started lacing into her, saying one of the first motions the government brought was to exclude any testimony about what his attorneys told them and their advice to not come in here. And now you're saying you want this testimony to come in here. I granted that motion in your favor, and now you want this to come in here. And she's like, well, we were saying that we don't want it to be a viable defense, but not to exclude all testimony. He said, no, that's not true. That's not true. You wanted everything excluded altogether. He was really very aggravated. But I will tell you this, the more I listen to this judge, the more I watch of this judge, the more impressed I am that he's actually is a very intelligent man. And I think he is trying to be fair. And I know that if you're on either side of the political aisle, you probably, and you're a hardcore righty or a hardcore lefty, you probably hate him. And I think that's reflective of a judge who's actually really trying to be fair and apply the law based on, what the facts are presented to him and the charges that are being brought. The more I listened to him, the more I said, you know what, he's actually a pretty smart attorney. And these other attorneys aren't really grasping exactly what he's trying to say here.
That's interesting. So, and I've seen some of that. There was another gal who's doing a really great job with a Twitter thread. Her name is, I talked about her earlier on the show, but she made the same point. She was saying that from what she's seen out of this judge, like, he's really, really deliberate with a lot of these jurors. And even Bannon came out, and he said something very, very similar, that he feels like, they're actually asking the solid questions that are going to result in a good panel.
Yeah. My respect for him has been growing steadily through the 2 days that I've been here. And I think that he's a pretty fair judge. So, and given where I thought about him after hearing those initial rulings, to be fair, I was probably a little too judgmental of him. Not that I really expressed much opinion about it, but I think I needed to really look at what his reasoning was a little bit more before I judge, because I was very impressed with him today. He was displaying great, sharp intellect, and I actually thought he was he was like the smartest guy in the room today. He really was. And the way he handled the attorneys on both sides, and the way he was walking them through exactly how to split the baby with respect to this letter, and what would be the most appropriate way to do, to handle it, and at the same time trying to be fair, and being clear with jury instructions. When we had Amerling come in and testify, she was the only one who testified today, and he's interjecting when evidence is being introduced and making sure that the jury is clear, that they understand that just because the committee claims that Bannon was involved with certain things here, that's not being offered to assert the truth of the matter, and no one here should believe, based on this letter, that it's actually true statements. It's just being introduced that you can understand the context of everything that's happening here. And these are things he wasn't even really asked to do that, but he was properly running the courtroom in a way that just seemed designed to make sure that no one here is going to get a raw deal. And that's what you're looking for in a judge.
Yeah, I agree with that. That is very interesting. So this is not a common charge, right? This is not something that we see a whole lot of, right? How many contempt of Congress charges are there every year? And when you get trials like this that prosecutors and defense attorneys don't have a lot of experience doing, right? They can be very complicated. They can be very strange. Like, I had an example. One of my first jury trials was in a jury trial in the middle of nowhere in Mayer, Arizona. It was very, very sort of out there. And the judge, it was his, I think, second jury trial, right, ever. So, like, I didn't know what I was doing, and he didn't know what he was doing. And it wasn't like a good fit, right? If everybody is sort of if everybody's sort of confused. So when you have a judge like that takes a case like this, sort of grabs the bull by the horn, right? The prosecutors don't have a lot of experience prosecuting contempt cases. Neither does the defense. And the defense here is basically, their hands are totally tied. They have no witnesses. Before you hopped on here, we talked about all the subpoenas that Bannon sent out. All of those were quashed by, the House. And then we talked about Bannon's estoppel defense, right? Saying I was relying on the DOJ memoranda. I was relying on, the executive branch to give me guidance on how to respond to these things. All of those things are sort of out. They're gone. And so you're going to see the defense kind of scrambling around and trying to figure out what to do here. And so to have a judge that is able to keep order and, move the ball forward is impressive.
It was really weird this morning. He actually made reference that estoppel defense is one of the things that the government has to overcome. And I was like, I thought he doesn't have that issue anymore. Later on, he was basically saying, okay, he sort of changed that up. He said that initially he said there were 4 things they have to establish. In the end, he said there are 3 things they have to establish. The first being that there's a default. The second being that it was willful and intentional. And the third being that it was never waived by the government. And that's what they need in order to get these convictions here. And if you listen to the opening arguments, it seems as if the defense is fixating on the willful part and basically saying, in the state's opening statement, they said that, he got these subpoenas and he just ignored them and thumbed his nose. In fact, that was the closing line of the state's opening statement was, when we're done with this whole trial, you'll probably say to yourself, wow, we made such a big deal about this. This whole thing is just a guy got a subpoena and decides to snub his nose at the government saying, right, we're not coming in here. And you might think that, and that's because that's exactly what this is. It's that simple. He was served a subpoena and said, I'm not coming. And that's why he's guilty. And that's what we're going to ask you to find him guilty. That's what she closed with. And Corcoran, who that's what she closed her opening statement with. And Corcoran, who did opening statement for Bannon, he got up there and he's basically saying they want you to think that this was willful or that he was just he was just ignoring everything here. But that's the furthest thing from the truth. He's sending letters from his attorneys. He's trying to be in contact with them. He wants to do whatever it is that he's supposed to do. And that's what you're going to see here, that this was not at all anything about him trying to say no to them. It was a matter of him trying to make sure he's doing the right thing. And at the end of the day, there was the one question I want you to focus on when you reviewing every piece of evidence here. The one question that should be going through your mind is, was this document created for a political reason? Every piece of evidence that comes in here, I want you to focus on that, because the state's whole thing is basically they're trying to wash their hands of politics here, and I think that's a little bit of a poor strategy, because I think that you're assuming that people are ridiculously blind to the fact that there's at least some politics playing in here. I mean, even if you want to say that this is not purely political, which I'm sure there are millions of people who say, no, not at all, this is not purely political, to just pretend that there's no politics playing in here and that this is 100% about the good of the nation or change or election reform or whatever other bases, I think that's a tougher sell than you need to do. Like why make it harder for yourself than just saying, look, this is about making sure that we have a situation that this won't unfold again. And the people in charge right now, because they won the election, are the Democrats. And there might be some resentment from the Republicans, but stop making it about as if there's no politics here at all, because you're just making it a tougher sell for the jury. Like, why make it harder on yourself? I don't like that as someone who wants to see good lawyering, I think it's a poor lawyering strategy. And so that's why, and it's better for Bannon. So there you go.
So you're saying that the prosecutors are ignoring the politics of it.
They're pretending as if there's no politics involved here.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah. I agree with you on that one. I think this is something where it's almost like a bad fact in any case, and you kind of have to go out and own those, right? Like, okay, look, there's an elephant in the room. Yeah, my client did say that after the fact, right? He did say that I know, but what he did before that was all bad, right? And so the prosecutors could come out and say, look, yeah, it's Washington, D.C. This is Steve Bannon. This is somebody close with Trump. It is political, but let's acknowledge that and set that all aside, okay? Regardless of that, this was the illegality, and you just acknowledge it and move on.
It's just a much sounder lawyering strategy. I was talking to someone else there who's pretty big name. I'm not going to throw names out there afterwards.
Well, we'll get Viva on here and he'll tell us.
I'm not throwing names out there, but yeah, he basically was saying that this looks like the prosecution's JV team. Like they have like different squads, and that this is definitely not the top of the line attorneys they have. I wouldn't go so far as to call them their JV team. Definitely not. Yeah. But I will say this. This is the second trial that I've actually come in as an attorney sitting in the courtroom and reporting on. And the attorneys for the government in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial were just on both sides.
Yeah.
Both the prosecution and the state. A lot of people didn't like Comey being in part of the prosecution team because of the politics around her name. But I'm going to tell you something. That woman is a kick-ass attorney. She was great, as was every member of the government and of the defense. They were really two dream teams clashing heads. It was a pleasure to watch. That's not what the feeling I'm getting here. I think Schoen is strong. I think Corcoran is pretty good from what I've seen so far. Vaughn was. There's just a few moments there today where I'm just like, I can't believe she's the lead counsel here.
Really?
This is their gun to go after Bannon. I don't know. I would think they would. She's not incompetent. But she's definitely at best upper average rather than being aces, the way some attorneys come across.
Yeah,
So
that's interesting. Yesterday when we were talking, I sort of did the driving on a suspended license analogy, right? Like this isn't that as you mentioned, right? This is not that complicated of a crime. It's like there was a subpoena, you didn't show up, that's it. So, you may think about like you don't need the most senior attorney to go out and make those arguments, but you are, like you said, you're going up against Bannon, and if the DOJ loses this thing, then I mean, holy moly, right? That would be not a good PR move for them. So
yep.
yeah, it is interesting. It kind of catches me by surprise a little bit. I thought that maybe you'd see a little bit more out of them.
Maybe they feel like, you know what, it's a case that she can't blow. I don't know. Maybe they feel like this is like such a slam dunk. And look, let's face it, you, myself, Viva, we're all the opinion that that's a fair assessment, that he's going up here. And it's like, he's basically trying to push that rock up the mountain that he just has no way of overcoming it here, no matter how great his facts or attorneys may be, that given the political climate. I think Viva said it best when he said, yeah, okay, maybe he did it. Maybe the judge was helping him wipe away the terrible jurors. But even the best of the jurors is still pretty bad.
Right.
So it's like, what are you getting?
Yeah, you're limited by the pool, and that's that's why I've been speculating why there's no objections to some people, right? There's no, or at least not in this case because we haven't really spent a lot of time unpacking this, but in the Sussman trial, there were some really like hard Democrats that I was shocked that made it onto the panel based on what they said. But then if you put them on like the spectrum of all the potential DC jurors, like maybe that's like the best one you got. It's like, okay, great.
Yeah.
So
it's true. It's sad, but
yeah, it makes it difficult. Well, I wanted to ask you about the jurors. I know you're busy and you've got, other shows you're hopping on, and I really appreciate you stopping by, but I wanted to ask, we had just got done here kind of going through some of the jurors. I know that they finally all got picked and settled in today, right? We had an idea yesterday. Any sort of thoughts? What I love to hear from you is sort of your impression. You're there, right? We read it, we read the tweets, we see everything. And we just went through, we saw, I sort of went through, the gal I was telling you about is Toria Brooke. And, so we went through, we got some demographics, we got some professions. I know there's a lot of medical people. I
haven't had a chance to actually cross-reference the numbers with who was kicked out. There are certain faces that I remember seeing yesterday that I know are not here. I will tell you that I actually had a stall conversation with Corcoran. Right after he gave his opening, we had a break.
Okay.
And I'm in the men's room, and next to me is Corcoran.
Whoa.
It's just, I'm not making this up. It's a true story.
I believe you.
So I said to him, strong opening, counselor. And he said, oh, thank you. I said to him, I got to tell you, one of your peremptories really surprised me. I think it might have been a mistake. So he said, which one? So I said, juror 1117. That was the old guy. When I say old, I mean relatively. He looks like he's 60, which is not old, but maybe it's your audience that's old, but to my audience, I know that's very old. But yeah, I mean, so he looked like he's about 60, and he was tall and fit. And I think that there were bases that might have confused the defense and scared them. Like he said, he's in filmmaking, which that makes you think leftist. He said that, but when he was, he knew more about this trial than a lot of the other ones. But when he was questioned about his filmmaking, he's in advertising. That's the film. He makes Diet Coke commercials. That's not a filmmaker.
Yeah.
I mean, he calls himself that. And the other thing is, when he was asked what he knew about this trial, he's like, well, they issued a subpoena to him. He ignored it. They seem to not care about it for months. And now all of a sudden they're going after him. I heard that and I was like, oh, wow, he recognizes that there's politics in the timing here. That's what I want. I want to see that from my juror. I was like, this guy could be like a great little mole for sitting there just sneering at the government for the fact that they had this political trial. And the next thing I know, they go through the peremptory challenges, and sure enough, the third one called out by Team Bannon was 1117. And maybe I'm the only one who felt this way, that it was the wrong call, because I was the only one in the courtroom who actually said no.
Yeah.
I I audibly called out, like, no. like, are you? And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? I was the only one who said that. So maybe I'm the only one who thought that. I don't know. And was I right? Was I wrong? Let's be honest here. Nobody will ever know whether I was totally right or dead wrong on this. But that's just my read based on the fact that he was so observant about the timing and critical of just a very casual critique of the government that they sat on it for months. That's not the sort of thing you think you would hear from a hardcore leftist. And right in this jury, you're looking for someone who you feel confident is not a hardcore leftist. So
Yeah, we went through some of the strikes. Now, again, the transcripts are sort of coming in late on our end, but we did go through some of the ones that were struck off, and then there were a couple. I wonder if like any of these ring a bell that you saw. So there were two that I thought were actually quite good for Bannon that really kind of stood out as a surprise. There was one guy who, I'm trying to find him here. Well, there was one. There was
which juror number are you talking about?
So there was a 1053 who was a millennial intern who worked for a Republican organization, which I thought was a little bit surprised that she wasn't struck. And so I think that was 1053.
1053, you say was a millennial who what?
A millennial intern who worked for, it's called the Republican Institute Organization, something like that. Millennial white woman says she previously submitted reports for a Senate for an internship, worked 2 years civil rights, highly versed constitutional law, Middle East.
I try to find her.
Yeah. And then there was another one I'm trying to find. It was like a...
Oh, yeah. She was a paralegal.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was terrible. Oh, she was bad. I can't... She's still in there? Oh, my God.
I think
That's a really bad... I'm sorry. There's no way I was wrong about this one. She was resentful about being on this trial, saying she's going to have to close social media, and that's what she does for a living. And she even made a quote at one point which said, if you don't go, you're in contempt. Well, this is someone who seems like she's already made up her mind. I don't know how the hell 1053 made it in and they got rid of 111. Oh my God, that was such a bad call. I'm sorry. I got to call it like I see it. And I'm sorry. I think that's a really, really bad call.
That's interesting. Yeah. So there was that one. And then we had another one. I don't know if you heard about this guy. It was 544. He was 20s or 30s, maintenance park ranger. This guy had a backwards hat, beard, tattoos. And the quote that came from a real Toria Brooke, she put this in quotes that says that doesn't think what happens makes sense is what this guy said. And so apparently he's on the jury panel. He's 544. And I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
Let's see, 544.
I know
I'm not sure if I was there for him. Was I there for him or not? No, I wasn't there for his. I didn't make it in the room for him.
Yeah. So, there were a couple interesting ones that I just thought that's weird. Like, why would the prosecutors let somebody on there who said it doesn't make much sense? And I'm sort of putting him up here below you. 544, male 20s, tattoo, doesn't make sense. The investigation, it just felt like one of those sort of weird ones that you would have thought the prosecutors would try to boot him off.
I will tell you this. There was another one I marked here as 0764. And this is the ponytail guy. He's a white male, his ponytail, he's an architect, and he watches ABC News. And he said he watched one partial hearing, and his first cousin's close with a criminal defense attorney. And he said they've been twice robbed. And I thought that this guy was potentially great for Bannon. I was surprised that he wasn't thrown off by the government. But I'll tell you this, the one person they had to get rid of was that attorney, who was the last one who was allowed on. My God. That's why I said to him, after I critiqued Corcoran about that, I said, I will tell you this, that you had to get rid of that attorney. That was death if he made it on. Because he's dealt with subpoenas before. He's politically connected in New Jersey, which means that he's been spending his whole life brown-nosing Democrats, and he definitely has Democrat ideologies there. And he would become the only juror who would matter because the jury, they're like, this whole law is complicated. We're dealing with mistake of fact, mistake of law, and then we're dealing with the subpoenas and are they required, and what really is contempt, and is contempt the way the prosecution described it, that it's a willful choice, that's showing your contempt, which was a weird thing for her to say. And he would just get up there and say, the dude's guilty. Let's face it. He got served, never showed up. He's guilty. And they'd be like, and that's what the law says about this. I'm telling you this because I deal with subpoenas. I know everyone in that room would be like, all right, that's what the lawyer says. I'm going to do it. He knows better than I do. So I'll go along with that. That's what I mean when I say becomes a jury of one. And he's a jury of one who probably is starting with 1 foot deep in the hole against you. I thought he was only ever going to be on as an alternate. But still, why would you ever want to open a situation for that guy to be sitting in a jury room? I don't even want him sitting in a jury pool with everyone. I was like, I don't want him anywhere near these people. So, yeah.
Well, so you had a full day there. Are you're going back tomorrow? I'm
planning on going back in tomorrow. On Thursday, I'm not sure when this thing is going to wrap up. Yeah. I mean, I was talking to someone who's a big name. I won't use any names, but he was speculating that this trial is going to wrap up tomorrow. And I was like, really? I hope so. Because I actually have a deposition on Thursday afternoon. So for me personally, it'd be really great if this thing would wrap tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how many witnesses they can each have. I mean, there was talk that they were saying that there might be a situation that they want to subpoena and bring Benny Thompson in
he's got COVID.
The judge is like, I can't imagine what you're going to allege that's going to justify to say that we should bring the select House chairman in here. That's going to be necessary. But I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get. I'm not going to rule on that now. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And now I heard that Benny Thompson actually is has COVID, which is a very convenient timing.
Yeah.
For if in fact there's concerns that the judge would grant this application, I don't think that with COVID they're going to drag him out of bed to come in here. So I don't know what's going to be with that. But if he doesn't have Benny Thompson coming in here, there's speculation that Ben is not going to testify.
That was my next question for you. So you're there, your boots on the ground, you're bumping elbows in the men's room with the defense lawyers. You know, what any sort of speculation on that? Because that might dictate how the trial goes, right? I mean, if Bannon testifies, it might not end tomorrow. If he doesn't, if he
doesn't testify, I have no idea who the hell they're going to bring in. I can't even imagine I mean, I guess they bring in Robert Costello, his attorney, in theory. That makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
To basically try and get him to dampen the story from. But we could, in theory, have a trial that's as few as 3 or 4 witnesses, and it wouldn't be surprising to anyone. I mean, Amerling can talk for a long time, and they're taking her very slow, like very, very slow on the testimony, describing like everything that she's ever done and everything that this thing is about. And every time she says the words January 6th, she tears her shirt in mourning a little further, and because that was like the worst day when there was like a third of the world's population died, and it was a terrible day apparently.
I know
it was very, very
the worst thing since Pearl Harbor.
Scorched earth by a relentless force. And cops were falling like flies. She said 140 injured police officers, multiple deaths. I was like, I don't even know if she's describing Pearl Harbor here. I don't know what she's describing. Because the stats, look, January 6th was a terrible thing. It's a bad thing.
Right.
I don't want anyone to take this as me making light of January 6th. I'm not. It was a stupid thing. It was a bad thing. It was a bad call. And there was no reason to go into the Capitol. And anyone who assaulted a police officer, I think, should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. There's something wrong with you. There's no justification for that. But on the other side of it, to make it as if, basically it's the equivalent to some sort of genocide or any sort of, horrific thing that should be, that's comparable to 9/11, Pearl Harbor, any of these things. I think it's really, it's kind of gross, and it's offensive to the memories of the thousands of people who died in each of these attacks.
I agree. It's a false equivalency. Joe Biden said it in his State of the Union speech that it's the worst attack on democracy since the Civil War. So what does that mean for for the Pearl Harbor victims, right? And for the people who died fighting that war? What does that mean for the 9/11 survivors?
I guess it means Trump's going to go hide in a cave and we're going to like send out armies to like go find them and start another 20-year war. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So to catch the audience up, right, you were talking about one of the witnesses who came out today, and she was actually the custodian of records she was actually the House Counsel, right? The House of Representatives. Her name was Kristin Amerling.
Amerling.
And she was there, basically, they were sort of going through like a civics lesson with her, right? Like this,
yes.
Sort of, how does government work?
Very, very much so. Like literally, well, Congress is made up of a House of Representatives and a Senate. There are 100 senators. It's like, okay. Then this is how we form a bill, and explaining how committees work and how, there's a House resolutions, and House resolutions don't have to they don't have to have senators or the president join on, and they have the power to issue subpoenas. And look, I guess at the end of the day, they had to make reference and walk everyone through it, but it did feel like civics 101 there, like literally explaining what Congress means.
Yeah,
so.
and they got her, like they got the subpoena in through her, right? And so she's going to be the person who's basically establishing, and this is what she looks like, right? I mean, this is an image I think I have of her.
Yeah, I mean, that's not what she looked like today. She had much more of a Hillary Clinton white pantsuit on today, but otherwise, yes.
Yeah. So she's out there, and she's just basically, they're connecting the dots that she's the counsel. She's saying, this is how I draft the subpoena. Actually, she may have drafted it. I don't know.
I think she wrote the letters.
Did she write it?
She wrote letters. She's also the one who like gives legal guidance to the sitting members of the committee. So like, she's probably the one who said, no, there's no executive privilege here. She's probably the one who gave, because she's general counsel to this committee, and she oversees all the staff, which the staff could in theory literally be thousands of people, and she oversees them. I mean, I don't know that it is. I'm sure it's more than 10 people, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's in the many hundreds, if not thousands. So she's overseeing them, and I think she's the one who wrote the letter. She wrote letters to Bannon. So she's, and there was actually objections by Schoen where he was like, how is she going to testify as to the reasons that Bannon was required when she's not part of the committee? Like he was saying, like, he was objecting to the nature of testimony, because one of the things that was said in the opening statement was, well, you're going to hear why it was that the subpoena had to be issued to Bannon, what the purpose was. And Schoen was like, I assume they're going to have Amerling explaining that, and I don't understand how she's qualified for that. And the judge said, I'm not ruling on that. If in fact such a thing happens, we'll cross that bridge, which is the right call by the judge.
Yeah.
He's like, let's see what evidence comes up. You can object at that point. So I do need to get moving. I'm sort of like running behind.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. I just kept asking questions because you've got the good knowledge, man. You were there.
This was great.
No, I appreciate you being here, man. You're doing great work. I appreciate your reporting. Everybody, you know where to follow Joe. But tell everybody who may not know.
Yeah, it's not Law and Lumber. If you follow, it's Good Lawgic.
Yes.
Right. I need to change. You set me up here. Yeah. So it's Good Lawgic. That's LAWGIC. On Twitter, I'm at Nearman Joe. And I'm sitting in this trial day after day, and I'm breaking it down. And my agenda really is to just assess the lawyering, how fair everyone is, how, and the reasonableness from each side, and basically point out when I see good lawyering or bad lawyering from either side, so that I can basically give what I think is an accurate portrayal rather than something that's narrative driven. And it'll be narrative driven depending, no matter which side of the aisle you're talking about, you'll probably be seeing primarily narrative driven news. And instead, I just want to tell you, this is what is happening. And this is my takeaway. And that's why I love working with people like Robert Gouveia. I'm watching the Watchers.
Well, yeah, Joe, you're doing a great job. And I really encourage people to go follow you. You've done an awesome job on all of these trials, the GM trial, and basically everything. You do an awesome job. And you're a little less ranty than me on some of the stuff.
When I'm doing trial coverage, it's much less. I'm trying to make it that less opinion based.
Yeah.
So I do a nightly show whether or not I'm covering a trial, I do a nightly show. Like tonight, I'll do a nightly show. I'll be much more detailed about minute by minute what happened.
Yeah.
And when I'm talking law and politics, yes, I am frequently ranty. People seem to really enjoy the rants. But when I'm covering a trial, it's like my objective here is to be as neutral a journalist as possible, because I feel like where else are you going to get real journalism from someone who understands the law? I think it's very hard to find. Now in these trials that no one can watch in federal courthouses, I feel as if I'm helping do a service for the public, where I can walk you through it in ways that perhaps no one can. And if they can, they probably won't. So there you go.
You're doing great work, and we wouldn't be able to see what is actually happening if not for you. So I really am grateful. Thanks for spending so much time with us.
My pleasure. Take care. Have a great night, my friend.
Everybody, that's Good Lawgic. Please make sure you go follow him at Good Lawgic on YouTube, and I will update and link.
And on Locals, goodlogic.locals.com. Later.
See you, Joe. And so that's Joe, Good Lawgic. And so let me exit out of that Zoom there. And Matt, what a great conversation. It's so good to get some of those details from Joe. And he spent all day down there. And if you're not following him on YouTube, please go check him out. If you're not following him on Twitter, he was also tweeting all day like a madman. So he is doing a really, really good job. And as I said, I really feel fortunate that we get the ability to connect with people who are there, because we do have some transcripts and we do have Twitter, but we're missing some of the nuts and bolts. And Joe is doing just an awesome job, and we're very grateful for him being here. But now, my friends, let's take a look at some of what actually took place today. So Bannon, we have a little bit of time left on the program. I wanted to go through some of the actual subpoena that was filed today, and also take a look at Bannon's reactions before we jump in and listen or hear from you, right? See what you have to say over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com and on YouTube. So let's just do a quick reaction, because yesterday Bannon came out right after we had the jury. Yesterday was all jury sort of debates. It's called voir dire, but they're arguing about what jurors should make it onto the panel. And Bannon, after that day one, came out and he said the following. This is what he said. You can see here's Ed Schoen. Good Lawgic corrected us. Ed Schoen is here, and he is with Bannon, and Bannon has his hand on Schoen's back. This is very interesting. Okay. Now I tend to make a big deal out of body language and how this stuff works. This is unusual a bit. Okay. Typically it's the other way around, right? The lawyer is typically putting his hand on Bannon's back, right? And I made a lot of criticism about this during the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, when I didn't like their body language with how they were dealing with Kyle Rittenhouse. I thought it was a little bit too cold. You know, if you're a defendant, you're sort of the enemy number one in the courtroom. And so typically what a lawyer does is they're sort of guiding you through the process, right? They're helping you through making sure that you feel like you've got some safety, you've got some clarity, and you've got some hope in your case. But it's a little bit reversed here. Bannon is sort of holding his attorney, right, and patting him on the back. Let's watch.
We look forward to tomorrow coming back. We'll get into it tomorrow. So looking forward. And I think we would have, and more.
Now you can't really hear anything.
If we've been on Capitol Hill in front of open mics addressing the nation.
Because he turns around and he just sort of hightails it out of there, as we're going to see.
On Capitol Hill. It's nothing but a show trial. It's time they start.
He's saying it's nothing but a show trial. It's time to start.
Having other witnesses, they give other testimony other than what they've been putting up. So we'll see you here tomorrow morning. I want to thank the judge. Thank you.
All right, so we'll see you tomorrow, and Bannon turns around.
Do you think the jury can be fair? Thank you.
What do you mean by going evil?
Okay, so then Bannon leaves.
Can you tell me more than that? Have a good day.
Sir, can you report on the prison food, please?
And that's Bannon leaving on day one. So, right, not a lot of comments other than it's a show trial and he's unhappy about it. Today when he left court, this is what that sounded like. So Bannon is now, he's coming out with his attorney after today. This guy with the democracy sign has been there for quite some time. He's been sort of around, following everybody around. And he is actually going to say something.
Look, it was a very good first day. It was a long day for jury selection. I really want to thank all the jurors for being truthful and blunt. I thought that was great. And we look forward tomorrow. We're coming back. We get into it tomorrow. So we're looking forward. And
okay, so he says the jurors were fair. I appreciate them being blunt and stark, right? Just the idea that they're just sort of explaining who they are so that they can make good decisions. And there's Ed, who is his lawyer, and there's Corcoran, who Joe met in the men's room. And this is now, right, that first statement I don't think is going to be a big deal. But the rest of the statement is a little bit spicier, and I think that the prosecutors may have an issue with this tomorrow. We'll see if this comes up tomorrow.
I think we'd have had been more productive if we'd been on Capitol Hill in front of open mics addressing the nation with exactly all this nonsense, this show trial they've been putting up on Capitol Hill. It's nothing but a show trial. It's time they start having...
Actually, this is the same clip, I think.
Other witnesses, they give other testimony other than what they've been putting up. So we'll see you here tomorrow morning.
Yeah, so, okay, so that is the same clip. It's just a different angle of it. So they actually didn't bring that up. I thought that they might actually bring that up. Now, there was another clip that I don't think I added to the mind map that we'll see. I'm not sure if they're going to try to bring any of that up or if they're going to try to sort of silence Bannon. You know, Bannon goes out, he says things, and then the defense... You know, the prosecution is going to say he can't make this political. He's trying to deviate the trial. We'll see. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we got some good testimony from Miss Toria Brooke. And so let's read through some of this, actually. This is what it sounded like. I don't have a transcript right now because they come in super late. But here, right after the jury was selected, the real Toria Brooke is reporting as follows. She says, afternoon, it's 11:17 a.m. when she posted this. The court is back in session. Judge Nichols is back. 8 jurors of the original 22 pool who were not needed are gone, right? So the jurors are gone. Says Judge Nichols is now giving instructions to the jury. Bannon has 2 counts. We've already talked about both of those. The judge says the burden is on the government to prove the defendant is guilty. And if you feel that the government has proven the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, then you find him guilty. If you do not find him, or you cannot see that the government can prove him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, then you find him not guilty, right? Now, as we mentioned, we got a little bit of a preview from Joe. Joe talked about the opening arguments, but here they are. The real Toria is reporting, she says, from the government, Amanda Vaughn. And Amanda Vaughn, by the way, is pregnant. I have a photograph of her. Let me show you this one. Now, some of my stuff obviously didn't save up how I wanted it to. But Amanda Vaughn is pregnant, and I thought I had an image of her. There's an artist rendering of this, but I can't find it. So we'll have to get back to that later. But anyway, so Amanda Vaughn is out there and she's now addressing the jurors. And she says, all right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, in September of 2021, Congress needed to know what Bannon knew about January 6 when people breached the Capitol to interfere with the election. And since Bannon was served a subpoena, it was mandatory that he comply with Congress's request. You will see that he chose not to comply with Congress's request, and he chose to ignore orders to comply even after Congress rejected his excuses to do so. Bannon was not complying with the subpoena, and by doing so, it made Congress unable to obtain the information it needed, right? So there's consequences to this. Congress is the part of our government that passes laws, but they also perform work to be able to determine which laws need to be passed. Now, in this case, she references it was to create laws to prevent January 6th from ever happening again. Okay. Now, this has been a very interesting distinction, right? Part of the debate here has been, look, I've said the January 6th Select Committee is illegal. It's unconstitutional. It's improperly committed by their own rules, right? They're not even following their own rules. That's it, as far as I'm concerned. Now, the distinction here has been the committee might actually be legitimate if, in fact, the committee is intended to create something that is legislative in origin, right? It's Congress. It's the legislative branch. They should be doing things that are in alignment with their legislative function. Prosecuting people for crimes is not a part of the legislative function. Now they're going to say, right, that they needed the subpoena so that they could pass legislation that would have a legislative purpose that would stop this from happening again, right? That's how they connect it. Now, I think that's a good argument. It's the only way they can really do that. But it is, I think, really not the primary cause of the committee, right? What is the primary purpose of this committee? It's supposed to be legislative, right? They're supposed to come out and pass something, but that's not what they're talking about. Is anybody talking about a new congressional act that's going to solve all of this and prevent this from happening again? Not really. Right? They're talking about indictments. Every time Kinzinger goes on the media, every time everybody from the committee goes and sort of pals around out there, they're all talking about Trump being indicted. They're all talking about Liz Cheney was out there in these hearings screaming about how every Republican who doesn't have a conscience in this situation is to blame, right? I mean, they're castigating an entire political party, and it's disgusting. But what the prosecutor is doing is they're tying this back to a legislative purpose, to a legislative function, to say that it is performing a legislative duty. It's not performing the executive branch's duty. The executive branch is the branch that's supposed to prosecute people, not the legislative branch. Now, she tells us Congress has to do research, right? This is what Vaughn is arguing. Congress has to do research to understand what the problems are. They can't pass legislation unless they know what the problems are. And they're entitled to information to determine what the issues that people facing are that need to be addressed, right? Now, if you take a look at this, right, the actual subpoena that went out, let's go look at it. What do they want? They're arguing that they need this so that they can pass legislation. But this is the actual subpoena. It came out. It says to Stephen Bannon, care of Robert Costello, David Hutchinson, Hutcher, Citron, LLP. You are hereby commanded, this tells us, to appear before the select committee to investigate the January 6th attack, place of production at that address at October 7th, place of testimony October 14th. Signed here by Benny Thompson, the chairman of, or the authorized member, right? Here's the address. Here's proof of service, meaning that they served Bannon and his lawyers with this. Here's the actual letter that went out. Now, this is what I want to sort of unpack. Is this letter drafted in contemplation of legislative action, or is this letter a political hit job, something that is intended to go out and eviscerate political enemies? And we're not going to read through the whole thing because we've already done this. But look, starting right here on page 2, this is all the garbage that the committee wants. This is everything that's a part of their fishing expedition. This is Benny Thompson demanding everything, right? The War Room podcast. We want anytime you communicated through it, the War Room podcast. March for Trump, any activities related to any communications you had. Your presence, purpose at the Willard Hotel on January 5th. Anyone with whom you communicated about, including Boris Epstein, Kashyap Patel, and so on. Look at this. It just goes on. These are all the documents that they have to produce. Let's see here. Look at this. It just keeps going on and on. Definitions, the terms to identify, everything they want. It's a big, fat fishing expedition garbage subpoena. So it goes out. And what the prosecutor is saying is that this is all a pretext for legislative purpose, which I don't buy for a minute. The prosecutor continues with their opening argument and says, the House and the Senate each set up committees to perform this research. The committees have a variety of tools that they can use to obtain this info, and a subpoena is one of them. So they set up the committee to investigate it, and there is a delay that's taking place. One cause that is causing the delay is the people who got subpoenas aren't showing up in the first place. Another is who came to the Capitol that day, why they were there, and what they did, saying Congress needs to know those things. Once the committee began its investigation, it learned that Bannon may have information about January 6th. And since Bannon was associated with Trump well after he was an advisor, Bannon had a podcast and he had information that we needed. Based on this information, the committee wanted to know what Bannon knew because the committee felt that they could prevent further violence. Do you see this? The committee is going to prevent further violence by interviewing Steve Bannon and legislating changes to America. Are you excited about those changes? So the prosecutor, Vaughn, continues. She tells us, on October 7th at 10 a.m., Bannon was supposed to provide documents to Congress. And on October 14th, Bannon was supposed to come to a deposition under oath. And as you'll see in the subpoena, which we just reviewed, it required Bannon to turn over fundraising documents, communications with people who may have participated, and so on. There was a clear procedure that he could follow to notify the committee. And the prosecutor, Vaughn, says Bannon raised a privilege as the reason for why he didn't have to comply with the subpoena. The government says that this privilege is not relevant to this case because it was up to the committee and not to Bannon. Right? The committee gets to decide this. Committee told Bannon on October 8th that he could not exercise his privilege to get out of the subpoenas, to both provide documents and to go to the deposition. The committee told Bannon that by his not complying, it's going to warrant criminal prosecution. So Bannon knew what was coming. He knew if he didn't show up, he was going to get dinged with a crime. And he refused anyways. Prosecutor says Bannon sent another letter, including the same argument that the committee rejected. So, ladies and gentlemen, we sent him a subpoena. His lawyers refused. Bannon sent another letter refusing this, and he defied the subpoena for documents as well as the deposition. Bannon then told the committee on October 15th that he unlawfully went against the subpoenas. A deadline came and went on October 18th, and Bannon didn't comply. So the prosecutor says it's pretty easy, as Joe explained earlier. He is charged with contempt for, one, refusing to submit documents, and two, refusing to go to the deposition. Contempt means knowingly, right? Knowingly didn't go to the deposition. The government believes Bannon thought he was above the law and refused to follow the rules. Pretty simple. The government says this case has nothing to do with what occurred on January 6th. It has to do with Bannon not complying with the law. And the real Toria is telling us the government is arguing that citizens just can't ignore the law, right? And that's a little bit about what sort of a recap of a lot of what Joe talked about. But that is where he was critical, and I think with good reason. The government is trying to say it has nothing at all to do with what occurred on January 6th. But yes, it does. All of this does. And so it sort of makes you lack credibility, right? And I think that's what Joe was talking about. So then they turn it over to the defense. Now, the defense is up, and I believe it was Corcoran who was doing the opening arguments. Bannon's defense takes the podium, and they say this: ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Steve Bannon was in the Navy, the U.S. Navy, for 7 years, and he left the Navy with honor. He then went into business. He co-founded a successful media company that provided successful media across the country. Bannon got into politics. He's a thinker. He's a strategist, and he helped a candidate run for the presidency. He helped Donald Trump. And after Donald Trump was elected, the evidence will show that he served this whole country because, quote, we're all in it together. Defense says Bannon's podcast discussed the political issues of the day, and it had a very broad reach. His podcast is often in the top 1, 2, or 3 in politics. Most major media outlets around January 6th were reporting there might be violence at the Capitol on that date. But 8 months after January 6th, a subpoena was pulled together for Steve Bannon. 8 months later. The subpoena was to go to a deposition and provide documents if he had any. The subpoenas that he received had pages and pages of legalese. And so what did Bannon do? He went over to a lawyer because he didn't know what to do with this. He's not a lawyer. He's a media guy and a Navy veteran with honors. These pages had to do with the U.S. House of Representatives. A lawyer for the Select Committee contacted Bannon's lawyer about the subpoena. The evidence will show that there is a direct communication between the Select Committee and Costello, Bannon's lawyer. So maybe he does come up as a witness, Costello. The defense says, ladies and gentlemen, there was no ignoring the subpoena. Nobody ignored it. There followed a considerable amount of communication here between the committee and Bannon's lawyer. We didn't ignore this thing. Bannon didn't take it and just throw it in the garbage like a photo radar ticket. He sent it to a lawyer, man, and they did a lot of heavy lifting on this. And we even communicated to the committee about this. They said that he just sort of ignored this thing. Not true. The government wants you, the jury, to believe that Bannon committed a crime. However, the evidence will show that no one believed Bannon was going to appear for the deposition. Okay, even the January 6th committee knew that. They didn't expect him to appear. They sent the letter. but there is no evidence that he was ordered to do anything at all. Right? And that's the point that we were making in our morning walk and talk. Shout out to Jack Stinson, who just became a member, who's going to get all the walk and talks now. The key point is that the government has to prove Bannon willfully defaulted when he did not appear on the 14th. The evidence will show that that date was not set in stone. That date was still being negotiated. It's been the open question. The analogy that we used this morning was about homework, right? What if the teacher says your homework is due on Monday, right? You better get it in. And you say, well, that's your deadline. Okay. And then you show up on Monday and you don't have your homework. And the teacher's like, where's your homework? And you say, I'm not giving it to you. I'm not turning it in. And then they say the next day, right? And the teacher goes, oh, huh. Okay, well, I guess we'll just go through the rest of the day. And then when you come into school tomorrow, the next day on October 8th, the teacher says to you, hey, I was expecting your homework yesterday, as you know, and you didn't give it to me. So what I'm going to need to ask you to do is to get it to me. I'm going to need you to give that to me soon because it is important. And I am the official teacher after all. So just so you know that. But we'll take it when you get it. Just send it over to us at any point in time. And if you do send it over to us, we'll be very appreciative of it. And thank you. Okay. So what Bannon is saying is that's not a breach, because on October 8th, when they responded to his basically his default, his breach on the 7th, they're sort of saying, and we read through the letter, that Bannon could still comply is what the letter made it sound like. Now, the prosecution is saying, no, that's not true at all. Here, their argument is that Bannon was in criminal breach at the moment of the default, right? The moment when he didn't show up on the 7th or the 14th. So the defense says every single piece of evidence will show that the committee and Bannon's lawyers were willing to negotiate and, in fact, were negotiating. Bannon did not raise an excuse. He raised an objection, right? He was actually interfacing with them. The defense says the interesting thing is that among the letters that actually went back and forth between the committee and Costello, one important letter was not mentioned, but it will be filed into evidence. It was a letter from October 18th that said, give us 1 week, okay? Give us Bannon 1 week. And I don't think we've seen that letter. Let's go back to the mind map. Do we have that letter? We might actually have that letter. Let's see what we've got here. Because as part of the pretrial proceedings, there was this one letter that did leak out in the investigation here. Yeah, now that's the 1014 letter. Oh, that's the 1013 letter. So no, we don't actually have that letter, but they're going to file it into evidence, which should be fun. All right. And so back over here. That letter, the October 18th letter, will be submitted in. A day after this letter, the committee set forward the criminal prosecution, and that's the date of the indictment. Is that right? The indictment, yeah, okay. So they must have been drafting the indictment and filing with the grand jury and all of that. So the indictment actually came out on the 12th. He's saying that the defense is arguing that basically on the 19th, after there was another letter that came from Bannon, Bannon sent a letter on the 18th saying, look, we just need 1 more week, just 1 more week, just give us some time. And then one day after that, on the 19th, they said, nope, criminal prosecution is started. There will be evidence in this case that 203 members of Congress did not vote to find Bannon in contempt. A day after this letter, the committee forwarded to criminal prosecution without Congress even approving it. So, defense continues. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you, ask yourself if this is purely about politics. At the end of this case, when the evidence is shown, I will ask you to find Mr. Bannon not guilty. Thank you. So Toria tells us that the defense is arguing the government unequivocally opened the door for a change in the use of the letters, right? Because if the prosecution is submitting that first letter from Benny Thompson, well, there's a whole series of other letters. And now the conversation is, well, we want complete evidence. We want the full amount of evidence to come back in here so we can really unpack this thing. The defense says they need a limiting instruction. Trump's letters to Costello proved that Bannon did not believe he was above the law. And the defense is arguing that the government is invalid in their assertion that Bannon was above the law. The government says this is not civil contempt. And the judge, this is funny, the judge says he needs to return to his chambers to get something he meant to bring with him. The media room is laughing and joking that it's an unmentionable. What could that possibly be? I don't know what that could possibly be. But then we're back in session. Okay, and the government calls Kristin Amerling to the stand, and Kristin Amerling is the House lawyer who we have her down here at the bottom of the mind map. She is this woman. We talked a little bit about her testimony from Joe, but right, she's the woman who is the lawyer for the government, the House of Representatives, not the prosecutors, the House of Representatives as the congressional body. And hey, shout out to Robin O'Donnell. Shout out to Robin O'Donnell, who just became a member. Awesome Robin O'Donnell. And so Kristin Amerling is basically the lawyer for the House of Representatives. And so she takes the stand. Now, the real Toria tells us, prosecutor Amanda Vaughns takes the podium, says, ladies and gentlemen, Your Honor, the government calls Kristin Amerling to the stand. She's deputy staff director and the chief counselor for the select committee. She's the committee's lawyer. Her committee is under Congress. Congress develops laws and conducts oversight to develop those laws. Congress consists of the House of Representatives and the Senate, right? So these are sort of, the questions are coming. She's sort of detailing what she's testifying about. So the question from the prosecutors would be something like, tell us what the committee does. What does a committee do? And she says, well, members of Congress, they sit on committees and they're elected officials. And committees also have staff that are not elected, right? So like you have the Congress people like Cryan Adam Kinzinger, who's on the committee, and you have, little Jamie Raskin, slippery Jamie Raskin on there. And she is not on the committee, but she works for the committee. So she's saying, I'm somebody who is not elected. I said, okay. Well, tell us about how the committees work. And she says, well, the committees are divided by subject matter, and they focus on subjects under their jurisdiction. They develop proposed bills for Congress, and they might turn those bills into law. So they go and investigate things. Okay, like the Judiciary Committee goes and investigates judicial candidates to make full recommendations for approval. The committees, says Amerling, is the purpose of them is to gather facts through documents and request testimony so that they can understand the issues. She says, sometimes we request documents, sometimes we hold depositions, where sometimes we do these things out in front of the public. It just kind of depends. And the prosecutor says, okay, well, these committees, do they have any authority to issue documents to compel testimony? And Amerling says, yeah, actually they do. Says most committees have the authority to issue subpoenas. Subpoenas, she says, are legal documents that are not voluntary, that require the recipients to provide those documents or testimonies. Testimony, what does that mean? She says testimonies before the committee, she says, it means individuals are required to tell the truth in giving information. Oh, explaining this all to the jurors. And she's looking at the jurors. Oh, okay. In hearings, staff can be authorized to ask questions of witnesses as well. Oh, and what do these subpoenas lead to? Do they lead to something called a deposition? And she says, yes, they do. In depositions, members of Congress and staff can ask both people questions. She says that the committees have deadlines because they're looking for information to, quote, find solutions in an urgent or timely manner. Right? What is this? This is my point about the legislative purpose. What are they trying to find and legislate? Other than indicting Trump. And she says, oh, okay, so what is the purpose of this? Why do you need to do this? And she says, well, we have to go do fact finding. Fact finding. Well, what do you mean by fact finding, Miss Amerling? She says, well, when you're fact finding, you need to follow, quote, where facts lead. Amerling says that you need to gather facts from and form those laws. She says, if there are gaps that hinder the committee, to be able to solve issues, then we have to go and issue subpoenas to get them. Like we can send a letter. Hey, we got some questions for you about how this works. If they don't respond, you can issue a subpoena. The prosecutor says, oh, that's interesting. Interesting. So let's turn, now that we have all that background, let's turn over to January 6th now, shall we? Do you remember January 6th? I do. I remember it very well. Why don't you tell me about January 6th from your perspective? And Amerling says, well, look, January 6th was a brutal assault on law officers, and over 100 people were injured. Also, this insurrection disrupted the joint session of Congress, and it was set on that day. They were supposed to finalize the final electors for the 2020 election. Okay, and so, yeah, that was a terrible day, I know. What happened after that, after it all occurred? She said, well, they formed a committee. The J6 committee came out, and they're tasked with providing the public a complete account of what happened on that day to make sure that it never happens again. And she claims experts are assessing facts that are going to be aiding law enforcement officials, and it's going to help the Congress people understand what needs to happen next. So, okay, Amerling, that's interesting. Thank you for explaining all of that. Now, you're the chief counsel, right, for the committee? What do you do for them exactly? She says, well, you know, I do a lot. I'm very busy. I manage the staff of the committee. I advise about the legalities to the committee. And I also, help them with their investigative efforts. Well, thank you, Amerling. And how long have you been in this position? She says, well, I've been working for Congress for about 20 years before I got involved with this committee. So I'm a lifer there. And so you joined the committee. Can you tell us about that process? So, like, for example, when was this committee formed? She said, well, the committee was established in June of 2021, 6 months after January 6th. And there was a resolution that was passed by the House. Oh, is there? Is that HR 503? Resolutions govern internal operations in the House. Resolutions don't need to be signed by both bodies and do not need to be approved by the president, right? Because it's a House resolution. It's not a Senate resolution, so it doesn't need to go over to the House. And the Senate and the president doesn't need to sign it. It's their internal governing document. So they say, thank you, Amerling, for explaining all of that. Now, why are we going so quickly on this? She says the committee has a sense of urgency due to the fact that their authority ends at the end of 2022, right? They're running out of time on this thing. Okay, that's why we're moving quickly. And so tell us about Steve Bannon. So you had to involve him, right? He needed a subpoena on this thing. So Amerling responds. She says, well, I was listening to Bannon's podcast, the War Room podcast, and Bannon was saying things were going to happen on January 6th. That suggests that, quote, he had prior knowledge. She says, Bannon went actually into DC. He stayed at the Willard Hotel and he met with private parties to interfere, she says, with the peaceful transfer of power. That's why he went to DC in the first place. And so the judge now stands up and says, hey, hold on a minute now. The jury needs to know that this does not establish that what Amerling is testifying to is true. Okay, so the judge interrupts and says, hang on a minute, ladies and gentlemen, this is that's not, you're not to take that for the truth of the matter asserted. Okay. In other words, she's not here to testify about Bannon interfering with the peaceful transfer of power, right? You'd sort of think that would be an objection on that. Because that's sort of, I don't know. The judge, maybe there was an objection, I can't tell, but the judge gets out there and he says, listen, that's not what we're here about. We're not talking about the peaceful transfer of power. He's not being charged with that in this case. This case is only about contempt of Congress. He got subpoenas. He didn't show up and testify. That's it. So the judge tells the juror, we're done for the day. Bannon's still in the courtroom. He's smiling away. He seems to be in good spirits. And that is the conclusion of the day from Toria Brooke on Twitter. And so make sure you go follow her, okay? At real Toria Brooke on Twitter. She did an amazing job of detailing that. I mean, it's almost like a transcript, but we actually are going to get the transcripts. They are coming in way later than I thought. So they're coming in at about 7 or 8 p.m. at night, which is about an hour or two from now, which is obviously way after the show. So we're not going to be reading through the transcripts today, but I will be posting them. For those of you who are following along at home on Locals or on YouTube at the j6mindmap.com, you can find those transcripts. I actually did plug those into the mind map today. So those transcripts are here. Day one transcripts are under day one jury selection. So if you want to dive into that a little bit more, you can certainly go over there. And thank you for your support. Thanks for signing up as members. Thank you for your super chats, because these transcripts cost $1.20 a page. And we're not even going to read through this one because it's basically moot at this point, which is a bummer, because I wanted to read through it, but it's sort of moot at this point. So if you do want to read through it, this is the AM transcript, and any other sort of legal scholars out there, if you're trying to piece this together, it is available. So both of those transcripts are up now and on the J6 Mind Map website, and I will post the others tomorrow when I get them, but they'll be after the fact. Now, basically, I think I'll continue to request the transcripts because we probably only have another day or two left, and it's probably not, it's not going to break the bank like a Sussman, like 2 weeks of Sussman trials would. So we'll probably still get them, and I'll still post them, but I don't know that they're going to be relevant to read through like they were in Sussman, because this whole thing might be done tomorrow, or it might be done on Thursday. We'll see. But anyways, my friends, that is the update. Bannon, of course, with several bits of reaction, and we know that we have a jury that is now selected. We've taken a look at it, and we got some input from Joe, and we got Nate, the lawyer, swung by today, which was awesome. And so I sent him a link. We're going to try to connect. So very interesting day today. We got a lot of information about Bannon, and now it's time to hear from you, my friends. So let's see what else we've got. Earlier today at the start of the program, actually, hold on a minute. I missed some super chats from yesterday that we have to attend to. So yesterday, a couple of these came in that I just missed. So Tara Rayner says the Colbert team had their charges dropped, but the 69-year-old grandma who is fighting for cancer is sitting in jail. An overhaul is needed to remove a tier, right? Move basically the second tier of justice. Thank you, Tara Rayner, for that. Yeah, I actually put out a short on this one. Pam Hemphill is somebody who got prosecuted, and she's going to prison for 60 days. But the Colbert people, we talked about this in the morning walk and talk also. Colbert people, free. They were there. They were criminally trespassing. They were in a physical location they didn't have permission to be in, and no charges. A lot of other J6ers in prison for that. Cruz Vet says, when they start the insurrectionist concentration re-education camps, will we still get to have Taco Tuesdays? Asking for a friend. And is today Tuesday? It is Tuesday, right? Today is Taco Tuesday. Somebody better go find out where Jill Biden is. She might be just shoving tacos in her face for all we know. Who knows? GN says we need a neo-post American revival. I was listening to I actually shared this with my team today. I shared a Tony Robbins interview that he did with the author of the book called Generations, which I've not read yet, but it's in the queue. Generations is an analysis of all the different generations that have existed historically throughout time. And the quick synopsis from what I listened to is that you start to see these patterns develop in society. When you have one generation, like the American, like the great generation, the boomers, that go through this giant difficulty, right? This sort of collective world battle, this conflict. And then after that generation, because of all of the sort of collective identities that you need in order to engage in a war, the next generation is extremely individualistic, right? Like the opposite. So you have like the great generation, the boomers, and then you have the Gen Xers, and everybody's like, oh, the Gen Xers, right? And then after that generation, then you have the millennials, and everybody's even worse with the millennials. Like, oh God, the millennials. Right. And which I happen to be a part of. Right. And there's sort of a reason for this. There's a pattern that exists. And if you go back and you look at other great conflicts, like other world wars, or going back to sort of to the dawn of time, there are these same patterns of generations that develop. And it was a really interesting concept, because that might mean that you can predict the future a little bit, right? You can actually forecast what's coming, because it's just the next sequence. The next event in the sequence. And then K. Bean says, Rob, I still don't understand how Congress can act as a judicial branch, not a court of law, but can issue criminal charges and jail time. And I think we got that one yesterday, K. Bean, but they can't. It's unconstitutional. That's what I'm screaming about. Now, Nate, the lawyer, right? He had a very good point about this. The House rules are, you can't litigate them, right? They don't, he calls it non-justiciable. You can't, they don't even come in to the equation. But that's different than the committee being legitimate, right? In my opinion, I think it doesn't have any representation. They're not even following their own rules, and it's not representative at all. And there's a whole other slew of reasons why I think that they don't have the power to do what they're doing. But, Nate, the lawyer, his point is well taken, but I think that is sort of something that I would add on to to my answer for you yesterday, K Bean, is that they don't have the authority to do it, but because they're operating under their own rules, which means they are immune from any interference, essentially, right? Nate, it's non-justiciable. You can't argue about that stuff. Yeah. And it's not appropriate. Okay. So you get the point of that. Now, those were the super chats that came in yesterday, my friends. And thank you for those. Earlier on the day, we had several come in. First one was from 63 Rambler. Says, hey, PBS had an A+ interview with SB, 2 segments. Must be Steve Bannon, right? Frontline, I think, absolutely worth the watch. Awesome. So that was from 63 Rambler. And I am refreshing the locals comments. So if you have those queued up, or if you're dropping those like they're hot over there, we're getting to those in one quick minute. So 63 Rambler says, PBS A+ interview with Steve Bannon, 2 segments. On PBS? Wow. Interesting. Just Kyle says, Rob, this is for AOC's false handcuff bail fund. We might as well just pull that up since you brought it up, right? I mean, since we're here, we're already here. Let's see if I have this bookmarked. I think that I do because it was so stinking ridiculous. But yep, here it is. All right. So here's breaking news. AOC. This is AOC being arrested at Congress. And look at are her hands cuffed there? I think they look cuffed. And there's a cop there who's walking her down the avenue around the Capitol, and everybody's taking pictures of her. She looks like she's handcuffed there, right? Holy crap. Did they just arrest a House representative member? Wow. But you notice that, right? Notice how that clip kind of cuts off right there. See that? The clip kind of cuts off. Oh, wow. So it looks like she's actually being arrested. Yeah, problem is, it was all basically pretend. It was all pretend because after that clip, right, they clipped it off. But watch. Watch what happens. Oh, she still looks like she's in handcuffs. Oh, no. But there are no handcuffs on there. There's no handcuffs there. And she just raised her hand up. What? And now she looks like she's doing handcuffs again. So, what a little scammer. Right? Look at that. And then she raises her hand and then she goes back to the handcuff move, right? Why is she walking around like that? It's because she wants to be dramatic about it. Everybody knows that. Thank you for bringing that one up, Just Cause. A lot of fun. Nate the lawyer was here. That was his comment previously. It's simple. The House rules are non-justiciable. The court has no jurisdiction over the House rules. Same with the Senate. And he also says, you are right about the committee. I don't know what point he's referencing, but maybe that they're garbage. I don't know. True. Oh my gosh. Is this Joe Biden? This is a comment from the pressure, which is Joe Biden, that says, I would love to see you collaborate with what some call a law tube. I only found you because of Arcada's shout out. You do an amazing job with your coverage. Thank you. Well, thank you. Shriana Mashana, International The Pressure, Batika Kafkar is Joe Biden. So they're here, and Joe Biden is saying, yeah, look, I do need to do more collabs with, I love talking to everybody, right? It's a lot of fun talking with Joe. It's a lot of fun talking with Viva. There's obviously good points to be made by Nate and everybody else. First of all, 2 things on this. One, I'm trying to free up time out of my schedule so that I can sort of do more of this and get more proficient with some of the interview components of sort of this space, right? I really don't do a lot of it. Mostly it's me just sort of ranting through mind maps and stuff. So I need to technically figure it out. I need to create time to do that. And honestly, for like the last 6 or 7 weeks, right, I think every other lawyer was talking about the Depp trial. So it's like, okay, cool. That gave me time to sort of clear out some stuff. I'm working on a lot of stuff with my law firm right now, which I spent 3 hours today with my team. And we are doing some cool stuff. I'm so excited about it, honestly. Like I'm making a lot of changes and everybody's sort of going, Rob, enough already. But we're almost done. We had a 3-hour session today. We really hashed through a lot. And that's going to really, I think, empower a second line of leadership at our office. That's going to really free up a lot of my time to do a lot more of this sort of public advocacy stuff. And at that point, I think I'm going to have a lot more time to get involved in interviews and go on other people's shows, because I only have so much time in the day. And if I can free up a little bit of bandwidth, then I might be able to, to do more of that, because they're fun. I've been on Recada's channel, I think a couple times, and on Viva's channel a couple times, but there's so many other people to meet. I mean, I was going to go to Legal Bites' wedding, and then we got a COVID scare over here with my girlfriend. She got COVID, and she got it on Tuesday. We were supposed to leave on Thursday, and it was it was a big ordeal. So we had to cancel that. And so I never got to meet them. I was going to go out there and meet Nate and meet Joe and meet everybody, but we were not able to do that. And, the point is, hopefully none of those guys and gals are going anywhere. Neither am I. So we'll circle up when the time is appropriate. But thank you for that. True Man Shun International, the pressure, Badaka Kafkar, with that very nice super chat. Oil Smoke Jones is here, says, if YouTube verboten, I'm thinking Alex Jones, Sandy defamation cases are worthy of your attention. Reportedly, Jones was decreed guilty by judges, sans hearing of merits by the jury. Yeah, I think those are kind of settled, aren't they? Didn't he kind of settle that? I'm not sure that there's a whole lot to unpack there, but I am open to it, right? I mean, I think that those are interesting cases, but I'm not sure he's really contesting that all that much. I could be wrong about that. Suzanne S. says, please fix focus. I don't know if that was me or on Joe's end, but I think I'm in focus. I think I look pretty clear here. No, hopefully. Jack Stinson became a member, so welcome to Jack Stinson. We got the morning walk and talks that we do every morning, and they're a lot of fun. Some people say they're better than the show, because it's not me going off the rails. It's just sort of walking around and chatting. Tara Raynar said, nothing to do with January 6th, but the first witness is general counsel of the committee and spent the afternoon exaggerating the moment. Sounds legit. Right. Okay, so I get the point. Nothing to do with January 6th, right? But then Amerling comes out and rants and raves about how tragic January 6th is. So the prosecutor is like, your first witness is like undoing everything you said, right? You said this had nothing to do with it. Your first witness is like, it's not good. John McGarvey says, good God, man, clear your notifications. That's on the Twitter. Yeah, I know. I usually don't get a lot of notifications, but I posted a couple shorts that have gotten some good response here. Some of the Bannon shorts in particular have been doing quite well. All right, so here you go. Here, the notifications are cleared. Notifications are cleared. And look, Alex Stein is here. He says, don't worry, baby. I'll bail you right out of jail. That's right. His hot tamale. Hot tamale, big juicy booty. AOC is out there, and Alex Stein, he's gonna bail her out. These two are gonna end up married. We're gonna fast forward 10 years. They're probably going to be an Instagram couple or something, and they're just going to be two little lovebirds. I think AOC's into him, if I can be honest about it. So, all right. So that was the update. We also had Robin O'Donnell became a member, and David Smith became a member. We're membering it up over here. Speaking of members, let's go over to our watchingthewatchers.locals.com community questions, because what did I do with these? Okay, here they are. David Smith's a member over on Locals. Let's scroll down here to the bottom and see what we've got in the house. First one from Bossy B says, enjoyed your morning walk and talk. I felt tired after watching you walk through the hood. Thanks. Yeah, I walk about 30 minutes, right? It's about 2 miles. I think it's about 2 miles, maybe more than that, every morning. It's good. Honestly, walking is a lot of work that I didn't realize how much it was. Like, my legs get a little bit sore. I've been walking every morning. I think I'm actually tightening up a little bit in certain areas. It's not bad. So walking is really, really good. Yeah. This morning, when you said, I don't know her politics, you kind of blew my mind. When you said, I don't know her politics, you kind of blew my mind. Did I? That's why I follow her. That's why I was following her and listened to her. Here's one of my shorts. I got skewered over this short. A lot of people don't like this short at all. A lot of my regular viewers angry at me over this. Very unhappy. This is misogynistic. This is totally inappropriate. And it's true. It is a little inappropriate, but sometimes you step in it, and that's how it goes, I guess. So we have here, Skip Money says, Bill's hanging. And that was not intentional on that one. Three Girlies is here. Oh, and the youngest girlie is back. I think she was at summer camp. That's right. She was at summer camp. It was an overnight summer camp. And I had my mom, I went to those. Some of them were pretty amazing. Some of them were, kind of rather be home doing whatever. But the youngest girlie is back from summer camp. Welcome back, youngest girlie. Hope you had an amazing time, learned lots of stuff, made some new friends, and you're happy to be home. Home is good. It's good to be back with mom and your sister. She said she really missed the live shows all last week because she was at camp, but she is super happy to listen live tonight. So awesome. We're glad you're back. Shout out to Three Girlies and the youngest of the girlies who is now back home and hopefully energized with that summer camp fever. Heather says, doesn't Bannon have the right to face his accusers? Yeah, right. You do, right? The confrontation clause says so right there in the Constitution. But it also says that you have, Congress has speech and debate and immunity privileges. And so you've got this cracking of the privileges and the cracking of the rights, and Bannon loses to Congress. Can't he appeal this later? Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of reasons to appeal that have already come up, and the list keeps growing. I think, yes, he absolutely will appeal, and I don't think it's ultimately a bad strategy. I know a lot of other lawyers, right, and generally it is, like, you never want to go into a trial planning to lose and to appeal. Like, that's a bad strategy, right? Not a good plan. You'd rather win, but if you kind of know you're going to lose, one of the things that you want to do, because you're not deluding yourself, is to etch in objection points throughout the entirety of the trial. And the Ghislaine Maxwell team was outstanding with this. The Bannon team is also good. But when and if Bannon loses, all of these issues that have been etched into the process will be appealable. And that will, the reason why appeals might be a little bit more beneficial here is because this is unlike any other case, unlike any other trial. I mean, in what other criminal case could the national Congress change and that might impact your outcome? Okay, I've never represented a client where my defense was like, hey, we're just going to wait this thing out until the United States Congress changes power, right? Never. But this is a defense here. Bannon's defense can say, all right, well, we're going to lose this thing, appeal it, maybe fight for a new trial. Congress changes power at that time, and we move forward with a new trial, with a new DOJ, or a DOJ that's working with a separate now committee, or a differently constituted committee, because the Republicans are in charge. And he appeals it, and the whole thing starts over again. So yeah, I think like an appeal might be better here than in the general situation. Next up is Miss Lucky. Sergeant Bob says, what will the Supremes do? Obvious Star Chamber proceeding or a Spanish Inquisition, right? The Supremes, I think, I'm not sure that they would uphold a conviction on this, right? Because the committee, I'm not sure what they would do, to be honest. Oh, and Miss Lucky, Sergeant Bob says, you should pull up Letitia James, illegitimate president, and dub in illegitimate committee. Yeah. Letitia James, that was a lot of fun. Letitia James, she has these facial twitches when she talks about Donald Trump. She hates him so much. So when she says illegitimate president, she does one of these things like, and I will never stop until we get rid of that illegitimate president. She's very upset about it. So that's what Miss Lucky was referencing. TOS Forever says Nate is on vacation with his wife all week. Oh, dang it. I invited him on vacation. That's not rude. Viva is recording at Pub Millennials on Bannon Day 2. I would assume that Joe is driving home safely. So Nate's on vacay. All right, so Nate's not going to be joining us. He's on vacay. Better place to be anyways. Sergeant Bob says, does jury verdict need to be unanimous? Yes, it does. Yeah, so they're not going to be able to split it, and it will very likely be, a conviction. TOS Forever says, hey, Joe. Heather says, yay, it's Joe. Sergeant Bob says, Yelp default in traffic cases. Haha, deja vu. So Sergeant Bob was picking up on my comment about waiting for the cops not to show up. Sometimes that happens. Bossy B says, the entire J6 crap makes me angry. Me too. Very angry. Like unreasonably angry. Like I can't even contain myself angry. Sergeant Bob says, hey, Rob, Mayor is a suburb of Prescott. It's true. It's not in the middle of nowhere. Sergeant Bob, I guess that's technically true. That is technically true. It's a suburb. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere, my man. It really is. It's right off the I-17. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's a beautiful town. I absolutely love Mayer. I love it. It's so beautiful. It's so quaint. There's a great sandwich shop there. I don't know if they're still there, but when I used to go to court up there, I would make time. Like I would plan my day after court. I would go get a sandwich or whatever that sandwich shop is. They make their own bread there. So they sort of bake their own bread, and it's just outstanding. Like a chicken salad. I don't know what it was. It's right around the corner. Go down the court. The town is one road. So you just go down the court, and it's going to be down on the right. You'll see it. Sergeant Bob, I can imagine the judge you went before. We are 115 degrees in Chino Valley. Even Miss Lucky is happy. Nice monsoon today. It's a beautiful place. This is a beautiful part of Arizona. Which is, when I say the middle of nowhere, it's a feature. It's not a bug. Like that's not pejorative. It's beautiful out there, and you're lucky. You know, it's a beautiful place to be. Here is C. Reed. He says, and just like that, everyone decided they was an arborist. An arborist, not an arborist, an arborist. I don't even know what that is. All right, so that's from C. Reed. Heather says, bathroom attorney summit. I am rolling. Yeah, you have conversations in there. Yeah. Hey, nice objection over there. Don't forget to wash your hands. All right. So Thunder7 says, Rob, I remember when you read Trump's letter on your video in which Mr. T waived executive privilege to allow Bannon to testify. Yes. So how can the unselect circus state that Bannon did not have executive privilege? What gives? This is contradictory. So they never recognized Trump's privilege. Like they never said that at all. So they said even before Trump withdrew it, that it still wasn't valid. So they said that as it applied to Bannon, they say that he never had it. That's why. Thunder7 says, Lady Liberty is weeping. Heather says, doesn't Bannon have Donald Trump's executive privilege the same as Alex Jones pleading the Fifth? Remember when Raskin said the Fifth Amendment is not a get out of subpoena jail card when Alex Jones unsung it almost 100 times? Aren't these individuals privileged to plea and not up to the committee to determine if they can use a privilege? So yes, I mean, the committee is doing whatever it wants, just to be clear about this, right? So like, they're not really following any rules. So yeah, they can do whatever they want. Like if you're asking the committee to hold to standards, they're not doing that. They're not even holding to their own standards in HR 503, like at all. So they just say whatever they want to. I wouldn't base what Raskin is saying about the Fifth Amendment and getting out of a subpoena. You know, like I wonder if his opinion about Eric Holder and subpoenas would hold or what. So you can't really justify that in any way. The problem that we have is when this hits a court of law, the court of law is just going to treat this as a regular criminal proceeding. They're not going to weigh into any of it, what the Congress is doing in their internal order, right? They're deferring over to Congress. They're not allowing this to be ironed out legally in the courts of law. Former LEO says, so I guess the defense asking the commission counsel about the Pelosi subpoena would be off limits. Probably, yeah, because they would just say objection irrelevant. You know, it's not irrelevant. And all of that has already been, all of that would have already been dealt with. So doing a quick refresh over here on locals. 3 Girly says, you are having struggle sessions with the law firm. LOL. It is literally true. Okay. We had a 3-hour struggle session today. It was great. And, you know, my team is awesome. We had an awesome, our director team, and they were challenging me hard. Like, we can't do this and we can't do this. And with intention, because I just like to go fast, very quickly. I like to get things done and build. I have an idea. Let's just do it now. Just do it now. Like right now, like just open up the browser. Let's just do it right now. We're all here. Let's do it. And so then they have to slow me down a little bit. They have to pump the brakes here, hit the speed bump, Rob. Hold on a minute. Let's think this through. And then we find this happy medium, right? That's why I go so fast. And then they slow me down, and then we sort of meet in the middle and we make good progress. It's a ton of fun. All right. And so 3 Girlies is also here and says AOC is engaged. Not for long. She's not for long. She's got her eyes set on Alex Stein, primetime number 99, always on the grind. And here he is. All right, really, Roberts. She's engaged. This guy's, he's a goner. Look at him. He's a goner. He's got nothing on Alex Stein. He doesn't even look funny at all. So Alex Stein and AOC, Kissing. First comes love, then comes marriage. Then we have to debate a baby and a baby carriage because AOC probably doesn't want one of those. I don't know. All right. And so that was from Three Girlies in the House. Let's see what else we've got over on over on YouTube. Just Cause says, donate to Hot. Wait a minute. David Smith became a member. Tara Rayner says, thoughts on the Secret Service text from January 5th and 6th. I'm going to unpack that story later. Yeah, big problem. I mean, the committee says we want it. The National Archives has now basically opened an investigation into this, saying that there are multiple layers of failures here. It's a very, very big problem. I am interested in that a lot. National Archives is involved, committees involved, Secret Service is involved. Why all of the texts deleted? Don't know. Just Cause says, donate to Hot and Pressed Teas. The transcripts are vital to our content. What did you think I meant? I see what Just Cause is saying. Yes. Okay. So he wants us to read the transcripts. We can read the transcripts, but when they're more relevant, the jury's already been basically picked. Lava Java Lava says, what's up, Lava? Says, would you defend AOC in court? Definitely. Yeah, I would defend everybody, basically. I can't think of a type of case that I would not defend, really. You know, aside from the obvious ones, like if somebody murdered my family member or something, like, okay, right, like that's different. But you know, as a general case, yeah. Now, not all lawyers are like that, and not all lawyers at our law firm are like that, right? There are lawyers at our law firm that have kids and they have things, you know, that they have, you know, they would have a difficult time working on, but other lawyers don't have that difficulty, and I'm not somebody who does. I've seen a lot of horrendous things, and I have a lot of difficulties that I've gone through in my life, and I try to see the best in people, and I try to understand that people are often a product of their environments and their context, and that even though people charged with the most heinous of things, there may be something off in there, right, that other people are overlooking. And I feel I've got an obligation and a duty to make sure that people are not being bullied and they're not being taken advantage of by our government. And I'm committed to that. And I think that everybody deserves a defense, no matter what the charges are, if I can be perfectly blunt about it. So yeah, AOC, definitely. Jenny B says, you missed my chat yesterday. And 2 from Tara. Well, that's my bad, Jenny B. I apologize. I really don't know what else to say about it. So yesterday I tried to use this other software, and the other software glitched out and it wasn't capturing all of my super chats. So I'm going to have to go back. Actually, I think I can go back. I'll go back. I'll try to dig those up. I think I can do that. Normally they just sit here in this little queue that I have, and I just pull them up like this. I just click this button, bing, and it just shows up on the screen. Couldn't do that yesterday for some reason. So I apologize to everybody who submitted super chats. And the last one for the day says, I guess it's a cross between an abortionist and an arborist. Seems legit. I think that is true. And that was our last one over from C. Reed, my friends. And I think that is it for the day. All of our comments are attended to over on Locals. And that is it. So we are going to leave it there, my friends. I appreciate you joining us today. Thank you to Good Lawgic. Thank you to Nate the lawyer who stopped on by. Shout outs to everybody who helped to mod the fort down. Of course, we've got the usuals here. We've got Vienti Kiss, who I think's on vacay. Maybe he's hanging out with Nate. K Bean, Zulu Zite. We got Just Cause, Lean, Playing Hooky #1, Geomancy, and Lava Java Lava, all modding up the place. And I'm grateful for all of you. We have our Spotlight supporters, who are those of you who contribute a little bit more to the show to support the work that we do. Shout outs to qsimple.com. Please go over there and check out his work. Big shout outs to Chris Romero. We've also got David B3 in the house, along with Dr. EMB. And if you support the show at the Spotlight level or an equivalent over on Locals, you really do help the community and help us do the work that we do here. And of course, I'll invite you to join us over there at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Click the join button right next to the subscribe button to join us on our YouTube membership. And then lastly, but not leastly, if you happen to know anybody in the state of Arizona who has been charged with a crime, we would love it if you would think about our law firm. We have a lot of fun on this channel, but we've got a whole team of people really passionate about the work that we are doing. We've got a mission to help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope, not only in their cases, but beyond that in their lives. And we would really appreciate it if you just kept us in mind. If you happen to know anybody that is unfortunately going through that situation, we would absolutely love the opportunity to help. But that, my friends, is it for day 2 of the Steve Bannon trial coverage. We're going to be back tomorrow with day 3. When I get the transcripts, I will post those later on our locals community, and then tomorrow on the j6mindmap.com mind map. But that's it for me, my friends. Now, I'm going to encourage you to go over, and I believe Joe has a live stream later tonight, so at Good Logic. In fact, let me try something right here real quick. Let's see, is he on? He is not even on right now. Okay, I was going to try to forward you over to him, but I will link in the description below. I'm going to tag his channel, so please go follow Joe if you want a little bit more nuts and bolts about what's happening. His reporting is outstanding. Viva is also doing some reporting at the Post Millennial and on his channel over at Viva Fry. And of course, check us out over at Locals. That, my friends, is it for us. Have a tremendous evening. Sleep very well. See you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.